Chapter 769. Chu Xiu did not stop Ying Bailu from challenging Lu Fengxian, nor did he express any opinion. Speaking of which, Ying Bailu was also the one who was deceived. His infatuation was no less than Lu Fengxian's. One had to know that with Ying Bailu's status, looks, and strength, the number of women who wanted to marry him could line up from Eastern Qi to Western Chu. But after so many years, he only liked Yan Fian. He was infatuated enough. Moreover, Chu Xiu did not feel any killing intent from Ying Bailu. This time, Ying Bailu was indeed fighting for himself, not for anyone else. Yan Fian still wanted to stop him. The sword welcoming conference was about to begin. She did not want any accidents. At this time, Lu Fengxian suddenly stood up and said, "Since Brother Ying wants to fight, then I will fight with you. Brother Ying, if you want to prove that you are not inferior to others, then so do I, Lu Fengxian." Yan Fian still wanted to stop him, but Lu Fengxian shook her head and said, "Fian, this has nothing to do with you. No one can refuse a challenge between martial artists. Don't worry, I will not delay the sword welcoming conference." As the sound of his voice faded, Lv Fengxian directly walked out with his ancient halberd. Yan Fian's brows furrowed deeply, but she did not try to stop him. After spending so much time with Lu Fengxian, Yan Fian understood Lu Fengxian's personality. As long as he made a decision, no one could change it. A smile appeared on Ying Bailu's face. "Brother Lu, you are straightforward." As soon as he finished speaking, Ying Bailu's ink-colored energy began to swirl around him, and a series of furious dragon roars rang out around him. The stellar energy transformed into a dragon, and his aura instantly rose to the extreme. This generation's Longhu leaderboard was filled with outstanding young talents, especially during this period of time. Almost everyone had placed their attention on Zhang Qingzhen, Chu Xiu, and Zhong Xian. Getting out of the Longhu leaderboard and entering the Wind Cloud leaderboard. In the past, such abilities might only appear once every few hundred years, but now, there were 3 of them in the same era. However, the crowd had neglected the fact that the other geniuses on the Longhu leaderboard were not weak either. Whether it was Fang Qishao or Ying Bailu, if not for Chu Xiu and the others, these few could also be the young elites who could lead an era. When Chu Xiu saw Ying Bailu's power, he knew that Ying Bailu had improved a lot compared to the time when Chu Xiu fought him. Lu Fengxian held halberd in her hand and was surrounded by demonic aura. The demonic aura was so thick that it even covered up his handsome face. It was as if a demon had descended. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. He really did not expect that Lu Fengxian's cultivation had also reached this level. When Chu Xiu used the 9 Heavens Fiend golden body, he thought that his attainment in this cultivation method was probably higher than Lu Fengxian's. But now, it seemed that Lu Fengxian's attainment in this cultivation method was not inferior to his. Of course, in terms of physical cultivation, even if the realm was not taken into account, Chu Xiu was still stronger. After all, he also cultivated the Great Vajra divine strength. Buddhist golden body, Devil sect body refinement. Now, Chu Xiu only needed one Dao sect mysterious technique to gather all the body refinement cultivation methods of the 3 major sections. The halberd in Lu Fengxian's hand clenched tightly. When it fell with a loud bang, it suddenly erupted with a shocking power. It even shook the entire Yunu palace, and the formation was immediately activated. "Lu Jiang," he said in surprise in Chu Xiu's mind, "TSK. He is actually a martial artist who completely cultivates the strength Dao. Your little brother is very ambitious. Cultivating the strength Dao to the peak is not an easy path. Using strength to break all kinds of techniques, but how could it be so easy in reality? People cultivate all kinds of complicated martial techniques. How could it be possible to rely on simple strength to break all kinds of techniques? If you want to break all kinds of techniques with strength, you need to be several times or even 10 times stronger than your opponent." Chu Xiu had only seen 2 martial artists who purely cultivated the strength Dao. One was Qinqingdi's fist, and the other was Lu Fengxian's halberd. This path of cultivation was much more difficult than that of an ordinary martial artist. Even 500 years ago, when heroes and geniuses were emerging in large numbers, only a few people succeeded in cultivating it. The ancient halberd smashed downwards. The boundless aura it exuded made LV Fengxian seem like a devil god. As the halberd descended, one could even faintly hear the roars of a devil god, incomparably horrifying. Lu Fengxian did not use the unparalleled divine weapon of Marquis Lu Wenhou in the past. The unparalleled divine weapon consumed too much energy. Once it was used, it would not be a competition, but a battle to the death. But even so, Lu Fengxian's halberd carried absolute power. Even some of the martial masters present were shocked. They wondered if they could block Lu Fengxian's halberd if they were in her shoes. Ying Bailu took a step forward, and the ink-colored astral qi around him turned into a dragon. He formed a fist seal and met Lu Fengxian's powerful halberd without dodging or retreating. A loud bang rang out. As the astral energy exploded, even the Yunu Palace's formation began to tremble and let out a series of loud noises. Lin Fengya's expression suddenly changed. She immediately joined forces with the dozen or so Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists of the Yunu Palace to pour their true qi into the formation. If they didn't use their full strength, the Yunu Palace's formation would not last for long. At that time, the entire palace would be completely destroyed by the two of them. Under Lu Fengxian's halberd strike, absolute power erupted. Ying Bailu's ink-colored dragon head shattered, and he was blasted back several steps. But at that moment, Ying Bailu's fists smashed down, and his astral qi dragon tail swung repeatedly. He actually forcibly withstood Lu Fengxian's powerful halberd strike. The ink-colored astral qi around him transformed into a dragon claw. The claw's power seemed to envelop heaven and earth. It tore apart the demonic qi in front of Lu Fengxian and clawed at her. Lu Fengxian let out a low roar, the ancient halberd sweeping horizontally around his body, resembling a demonic god. Every time it swept out, an earth-shattering explosion would resound out. Under the continuous sweep of the ancient halberd, the astral qi dragon claw had already shattered, the black astral qi dissipating in all directions. Even the ground beneath their feet was filled with cracks. Lu Fengxian's unrivaled demon god halberd was similar to Qin Qingdi's fist intent, containing very few variations, only extreme power. Block it, and you have a chance to win. Fail, and you'll be the one lying on the ground. But Ying Bailu's expression didn't change at all. With a wave of his hand, the black dragon roared and turned into a long saber, slashing down. The dragon head as the hilt, the dragon body as the blade. Unsheathing the great dragon saber, it could behead the world. A piercingly sharp edge descended with a violent momentum. The saber and halberd collided, and the shockwaves were exceptionally shocking. Although it was Ying Bailu's great dragon saber that shattered in the end, a crack also appeared on Lu Fengxian's halberd. Even the demonic qi around Lu Fengxian's body thinned a little, revealing his handsome face, but his eyes were tainted by demonic qi. Ying Bailu didn't stop. This time, his ink-colored astral qi condensed into a dragon spear, and he thrust it at Lu Fengxian with an indomitable momentum. Both sides clashed again, and each time they exchanged blows, the power behind each exchange was incomparably terrifying. Everyone was watching intently. The fight between the two was very exciting. It could be said that most of the martial Dao masters present would not dare to say that they could beat LV Fengxian and Bailu for sure. Lu Fengxian's strength was unparalleled, and she walked the path of suppressing others with sheer strength. On the other hand, Ying Bailu's foundation was also incomparably strong. In terms of pure strength, he wasn't much weaker than Lu Fengxian. Most importantly, Ying Bailu's martial Dao was ever-changing. Although he didn't use any weapons, he could condense any kind of qi from his astral qi. He could use almost every kind of qi with great proficiency. Although he couldn't be ranked at the top among those in the same cultivation realm, there were only a handful of people who could match Ying Bailu. Just as the two of them had reached a critical moment in their battle, Chu Xiu suddenly frowned. In his mind, Lu Jianghu suddenly chuckled, "Your little brother is about to lose. That Ying family brat is not ordinary." Shangshui River's Ying clan, the Black Dragon ancestral bloodline. Although the Ying clan's people spend most of their time in hibernation, it's undeniable that every generation of the Ying family's disciples is not weak. As soon as Lu Jianghe's voice fell, the ink-colored astral chi surrounding Bailu instantly rose to its peak. He formed a seal with his hands, and the ink-colored astral chi transformed into black dragons that coiled around his body. They were vivid and lifelike, but their artistic conception was somewhat different from before. Almost all martial artists in the oneness of heaven and man realm could condense their astral chi into objects. In theory, any martial artist who could externalize astral chi could do it. However, there were only a few who could truly condense their astral chi into objects. Moreover, Ing Bailu didn't just have one black dragon around him. He had condensed 2, 3, 4, and in the end, he had even condensed 9 black dragons. As they roared, they transformed into 9 dragon seals that fell with a loud rumble. They completely enveloped Lu Fengxian, and they continuously strangled her. Halberd danced madly, and Lu Fengxian's eyes had already turned crimson. The demon god's unparalleled halberd seemed to possess the might of a demon god. The horrifying devilish might caused the expressions of the people present to change slightly. In truth, none of the people present had regarded Lu Fengxian as a member of the Devil Dao. Compared to Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian's actions were indeed very kind. He had almost never done any evil deeds. Although he had killed many people, he usually only killed people who wanted to kill him. However, looking at Lu Fengxian's current appearance, who would believe that he wasn't a member of the Devil Dao? At the very least, in terms of cultivation method alone, Lu Fengxian was a genuine member of the Devil Dao. There was no doubt about it. Just when the demonic chi around Lu Fengxian had reached its peak, the cracks on halberd in his hand gradually widened. Finally, with a loud bang, it completely shattered. The weapon scattered in all directions, and the demonic chi around Lu Fengxian dissipated. Ing Bailu's situation was different. The 9 dragons around him did not dissipate. Instead, they merged into his body, causing his aura to grow stronger and stronger. At last, it reached its peak, and he directly stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Fang Qi Shao stood up abruptly. His expression changed, and he subconsciously spat out a word, F***CK. Chapter 770. Although the battle between Ing Bailu and Lu Fengxian seemed to be Ing Bailu's victory, Lu Fengxian did not actually lose. He only lost this time because his weapon was at a disadvantage. If he had used the unparalleled divine weapon, Ing Bailu would not have won as easily as he did now. Of course, if Lu Fengxian used the unparalleled divine weapon, Ing Bailu would still have some trump cards up his sleeves. However, at that time, it would no longer be a competition, but a battle of life and death. On the contrary, the crowd was surprised at the beginning that Ing Bailu became a martial Dao Grandmaster, but they were not that surprised anymore. Ing Bailu was ranked 3rd on the Longhu leaderboard, but everyone knew that he rarely fought and kept a low profile. If he went all out, he could compete with Fang Qi Shao for the first place. Therefore, it was normal for him to become a martial Dao Grandmaster now. Of course, it was normal for Ing Bailu to win, but Fang Qi Shao's heart was about to explode. Before this, Fang Qi Shao did not care much about winning or losing, so he did not care much about the Longhu leaderboard. Geniuses like Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian, and Chu Xiu were all ranked ahead of him. Why should he waste his energy to compete with them? But now, all 3 of them had become martial Dao Grandmasters. He had been criticized by the old guys in Sword King City several times. Who would have thought that Ing Bailu, who was ranked behind him, would step on him and become a martial Dao Grandmaster? This matter would definitely make those old guys even angrier. Fang Qi Shao could imagine what he would have to endure when he returned to Sword King City. After sitting down again, Fang Qi Shao rubbed his head in annoyance. He suddenly raised his head and sighed. Since ancient times, love has always been filled with regret. Ing Bailu can be considered an infatuated person. I'm afraid he was hurt by love this time, causing his state of mind to fall to the extreme. He had to sublimate before he finally broke through. Brother Chu, do you think I should find someone to love and try this feeling? Maybe I can make a breakthrough or something? Chu Xiu glanced at him and said, your request is quite simple. In Yanjing City Spring Moon Brothel, there are 10 silver taels for a night of love, and there are also 100 silver taels for a night of love. If you want to try, as long as your body can take it, I'll arrange it. Fang Qishao subconsciously wanted to thank him, but then he felt that it was a little inappropriate. What? A handsome and elegant genius like him, Fang Qishao, was only fit to find love in a brothel? At this moment, Ying Bailu cupped his hands at Lu Fengxian and said, "Brother Lu, thank you for letting me win." With that, Ying Bailu tossed the green dragon emu heaven reversing life transformation pill to Lu Fengxian and turned to leave. At this time, Uncle Fu whispered to Ying Bailu, "Young master, since you're here, why don't you leave after the sword welcoming assembly?" Ying Bailu glanced at Uncle Fu with a slightly surprised expression. This was because Uncle Fu was very opposed to him pursuing Yan Fian. Yan Fian didn't agree to his pursuit. In Uncle Fu's opinion, Yan Fian wasn't even worthy of his young master. And in Uncle Fu's opinion, those women from the Yunu Palace were nothing good. Therefore, Uncle Fu didn't want Ying Bailu to have anything to do with the Yunu Palace. Now, Uncle Fu saw that he had thought it through, so he didn't mind. Ying Bailu didn't think too much about it. Since Uncle Fu said so, Ying Bailu also sat in the back. Seeing that things didn't get out of hand, Lin Fengya and Yan Fian breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Lu Fengxian said to Yan Fian, "Fian, we can start the sword welcoming assembly." Yan Fian said, "You just finished fighting with young Master Ying. Recover some true qi first." Lu Fengxian shook her head and said, "There's no need. I was just sparring with young Master Ying just now. It wasn't a real life and death battle. I didn't expend much energy. I can just attack directly." At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Brother Lu, since you're preparing for the sword welcoming assembly, it's better to be more cautious. I'll give you some things." Lu Fengxian walked over to Chu Xiu without thinking. Yan Fian, who was behind him, frowned but didn't say anything. Chu Xiu pulled Lu Fengxian to the side. Before Lu Fengxian could open his mouth to ask anything, Chu Xiu casually stuffed a bottle of blood recovery pills into his hands. But he secretly transmitted his voice, "Brother Lu, if I said that there's something strange about this sword welcoming assembly, that Yan Fian and the others are scheming against you, and that the consequences will even make you cripple your cultivation and shorten your lifespan, would you believe me or not?" Lu Fengxian was stunned. He looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised gaze, and then subconsciously looked at Yan Fian. After a long while, he nodded his head heavily and said, "I believe you." Chu Xiu was stunned. Lu Fengxian believed him so easily. This seemed to be somewhat beyond his expectations. But then, Lu Fengxian said, "But I also believe that Fian won't harm me. Brother Chu, you're doing this for my own good. But there must be some misunderstanding." Chu Xiu patted his head. He knew it would be like this. This was Lu Fengxian's character. "Then have you ever thought about what you would do if this matter is true? I've already told you the consequences. Your cultivation will be crippled, and even your lifespan will be shortened." Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, "Since it's just in case, it's not absolute. Since it's not absolute, how can I suspect Fian? If it really happens, then I, Lu Fengxian, am blind and trusted the wrong person. But if it doesn't happen, and I suspect Fian, then I'll be letting down my own conscience. I, Lu Fengxian, don't want to betray anyone in my life. If someone betrays me, then I will betray them. Things that haven't happened, then we'll talk about it after it happens." After saying that, Lu Fengxian put away the bottle of blood recovery pills and walked straight to the center of the hall. Chu Xiu shook his head slightly. For a person like Lu Fengxian, you could say that he's stupid, but you could also say that he's really good. Being friends with such a person, at least you won't have to worry about his betrayal. And Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian just happened to have two different personalities. He looked at everyone with a suspicious attitude. Lu Fengxian believed that humans were good by nature, while he believed that humans were evil by nature. But it didn't matter. He had already guessed Lu Fengxian's answer. Since he was already here, he wouldn't sit and watch Lu Fengxian get into trouble. At this time, Yan Fian saw that Chu Xiu didn't say anything to Lu Fengxian, and she also breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Fengya said in a clear voice, "Sword Spirit, please." As her voice fell, 4 female disciples of the Yu Palace carried a huge formation plate and placed it in the hall. On the formation plate was an incomparably resplendent, pure white longsword. It didn't contain any impurities, and it looked like it was made of crystal. It was abnormally magnificent. Lu Jianghu spat in Chu Xiu's mind and sneered, "That's it." This sword was specially made by the Red Lotus Demon Venerable with 10,000 years of ice crystals from the northern snow mountain. Other than looking good, it has no other use. At this time, Lin Fengya stood in front of the heavenly sword and bowed respectfully. Yu Palace's 96th Palace Lord, Lin Fengya, please Sword Spirit, baptize my Yu Palace's disciple. After Lin Fengya finished speaking, the heavenly sword instantly released an extremely resplendent power, and the image of a 9-tailed celestial fox appeared in the hall. Its entire body was pure white without any impurities. Only its eyes were scarlet red, but it made the 9-tailed celestial fox look a little more charming. 9 large fox tails floated behind it, gently dancing, but it made the 9-tailed celestial fox look incomparably holy. It didn't have the slightest ruthlessness of a ferocious beast. Lu Jianghu sneered, "See? This beast's appearance is really not bad." Otherwise, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable wouldn't have suddenly wanted to capture it as a pet. Ugly ferocious beasts would have long been skinned and used to refine pills and weapons. Their remnant souls would also be used as artifact spirits. Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghu's nagging. He just stared at the 9-tailed celestial fox's remnant soul without blinking, ready to make a move at any time. The 9-tailed celestial fox's remnant soul gracefully walked in front of Lu Fengxian, and its 9 large fox tails completely enveloped Lu Fengxian. Shui Wuxiang and the other 3 revealed a trace of coldness in their eyes. If Chu Xiu wasn't here, the Yu Palace's slut dared to scheme against their lord, they would have already made a move. "I say, are you guys prepared?" Chu Xiu suddenly asked Shui Wuxiang and the others. No matter what, these 4 were LV Wenho's battle generals in the past. Even if Lu Fengxian didn't listen to them now, they wouldn't just sit still and wait for death. Shui Wuxiang smiled, "We have made some preparations. The Yu Palace's array formation has been tampered with by me. But now that official Chu is here, our methods can only play a supporting role." Chu Xiu's strength was there for all to see. With him around, he naturally wouldn't sit still and watch anything happen to Lu Fengxian. According to Shui Wuxiang's original plan, if Chu Xiu didn't make a move, then they would use all the methods they had prepared and escape with Lu Fengxian in the chaos. At this time, the 9-tailed celestial fox looked at Lu Fengxian, who was wrapped in its 9 tails, and its eyes revealed a satisfied look. For so many years, the food that the Yu Palace had offered to it was the most delicious. Her power was incomparably pure, and she had a pure heart that hadn't been polluted. Her essence, energy, and spirit were at their peak. From the 9-tailed celestial fox, a demonic aura eroded Lu Fengxian's will and began to absorb her essence, energy, and spirit. If it was an ordinary Yu Palace martial artist, they would have already been brainwashed by the Yu Palace. Moreover, the 9-tailed celestial fox's power was inclined towards mental force. They wouldn't be able to detect it while absorbing essence, energy, and spirit. Therefore, those Yu Palace martial artists who had their essence, energy, and spirit absorbed would only feel very tired. They thought that they had consumed too much energy during the baptism of the heavenly sword. It wasn't until some time after the baptism ended that their cultivation began to rapidly decline. But by that time, it was already too late. But for some reason, the 9-tailed celestial fox's power couldn't invade Lu Fengxian's mind. In practically an instant, Lu Fengxian knew that something was wrong. What Brother Chu said was true. Yan Fian was lying to him. Chapter 771. To people like Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghu, being hurt by love was very pretentious. It was even more pretentious in the eyes of people like Fang Qishao, who didn't even pay to visit a brothel. But to people like Lu Fengxian and Ning Bailu, who were infatuated with love, it was a huge blow. With Lu Fengxian's personality, it wasn't that he hadn't been betrayed before. In the past, when Chu Xiu had first met LV Fengxian, he had said that among the friends he had befriended, there were those who were reliable and loyal, but there were also those who would forsake righteousness at the sight of profit. But when Lu Fengxian was betrayed by these people, he only felt sad, but when he was betrayed by Yan Fian, he felt his heart die. Because he had given up his heart, and he had given up too much. All of this was completely annihilated in an instant. Yan Fian seemed to feel Lu Fengxian's mood, and her eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of guilt. The sky sword baptism was about to begin, and in the entire Yunu palace, no one met the requirements of the nine-tailed celestial fox. Her master couldn't, and she couldn't either. So when she first got close to Lu Fengxian, it was with a utilitarian motive. And apart from Lu Fengxian, she couldn't find anyone else on the Longhu list who met this requirement. Ing Bailu couldn't. If he dared to plot against the successor of the Shangshuaying clan, he was simply tired of living. Fang Qishao couldn't either. Not to mention the strength of the Sword King city itself, Fang Qishao's personality wouldn't have anything to do with her. As for Li Feilian, he came and went like a ghost, and his figure couldn't be seen at all. So Yan Fian could only choose Lu Fengxian. But humans weren't plants, so how could they be emotionless? At first, Yan Fian did have the idea of using Lu Fengxian, but in the process of interacting with Lu Fengxian, she gradually changed. Previously, Lu Fengxian said that Yan Fian had been cultivating hard before the start of the sword welcoming conference. Actually, that wasn't acting, but really cultivating hard. As long as Yan Fian could meet the requirements of the nine-tailed celestial fox, she would rather participate in the sky sword baptism herself than let Lu Fengxian come. Anyway, as long as the Yunu Palace received the protection of the sky sword for another 100 years, they would definitely be able to cultivate another successor. In Yunu Palace would definitely be able to Fengxian for another 100 years. Seeing that the sword welcoming meet was about to begin, between LV Fengxian's friendship and the interests of the sect, Yan Fian finally chose the latter. However, she had already made preparations. After this, she would protect LV Fengxian for a lifetime. As long as their Yunu Palace still existed, LV Fengxian would be fine. But at this time, Lu Jianghu said, "Wait, there seems to be something wrong with that little brother of yours." He actually resisted the erosion of the nine-tailed celestial fox's power with his own willpower. TSK, his willpower is really strong. But that was when Lu Jianghu said, "Hold on. There seems to be something wrong with that little brother of yours." He actually resisted the nine-tailed celestial fox's power with his own will. TSK, his will is really strong. Although Lu Jianghu, the fake demon lord, seemed unreliable at times, he was still a good judge of character. At this time, wrapped up by the nine-tailed celestial fox, Lu Fengxian was surrounded by demon qi, and his eyes were already stained with a touch of red. At this moment, LV Fengxian, who was wrapped up by the nine-tailed fox, was surrounded by demonic aura and her eyes were tainted with a scarlet-red color. At this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally very elegant and indifferent, also revealed a look of doubt. The nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally elegant and indifferent, revealed a doubtful look at this moment. That nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally very elegant and indifferent, also revealed a look of doubt. The nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes couldn't help but reveal an ominous glint. The nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes couldn't help but reveal an ominous glint. No matter how good its appearance was, it was still an ancient vicious beast. Back in ancient times, it had eaten countless cultivators like desserts. Its temper was definitely not good. So, after discovering that Lu Fengxian wasn't eroded by its mind power at all, the nine-tailed celestial fox's nine tails shrunk even tighter, and a burst of aura bloomed. Seeing this scene, the others didn't feel anything wrong, but Lin Fengya and Yan Fian frowned at the same time. This was because such a situation had never happened in the previous sword welcoming meet. Could it be that something had happened? At this time, Lu Fengxian suddenly opened his eyes. There was no longer any human spirit in his eyes, only boundless scarlet and powerful demon qi. Wisps of black demon qi coiled around his body. The demon qi was so detailed that it condensed into an armor-like shape around Lu Fengxian's body. At this time, the aura around Lu Fengxian had also become extremely fierce. That fierce aura was so fierce that even the nine-tailed celestial fox couldn't contain it, and it leaked outside. Everyone present was slightly stunned when they felt this aura. Resisting so fiercely, was this still the heavenly sword baptism? Why did it feel like he was fighting with his life on the line? At this time, Shui Wuxiang and the other three were extremely excited, because this aura was a familiar feeling to them from 10,000 years ago. LV Fengxian suddenly raised his head, and the powerful demonic aura around him condensed into a cyclone tornado. His scarlet eyes stared straight at the nine-tailed celestial fox, and he shouted in a low voice, "Evil creature! How dare you!" This voice was low and hoarse, and it was very different from Lu Fengxian's voice before. And hearing this voice, and seeing Lu Fengxian's current state, the nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly began to tremble, and his eyes revealed a look of horror. Previously, he didn't recognize Lu Fengxian's appearance, but now that he felt Lu Fengxian's aura, and then associated it with his current appearance, the nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly remembered the demon-like existence from 10,000 years ago. That incomparably powerful existence, even more fierce than these ferocious beasts. Boundless demon qi condensed into halberd, and Lu Fengxian chopped with one hand. With a loud bang, the nine-tailed celestial fox that wrapped around Lu Fengxian was completely torn apart, and even the nine-tailed celestial fox was sent flying to one side. Lin Fengya and Yan Fian's expressions suddenly changed. What was going on? How was it possible that even the nine-tailed celestial fox couldn't suppress Lu Fengxian? It should be known that even if the nine-tailed celestial fox's power was close to exhaustion, and even if there were 10 Lin Fengya, she would still be no match for the nine-tailed celestial fox. In the end, not only did the nine-tailed celestial fox fail to absorb Lu Fengxian's essence, but it was also sent flying. However, she didn't know that although the nine-tailed celestial fox was not so weak, it was frightened just now, not by Lu Fengxian, but by LV Wenhou. 10,000 years ago, the demon god LV Wenhou was really like a demon god that had descended to the world, and he was almost unstoppable. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, even these ferocious beasts had heard of LV Wenhou's name. He was so powerful that it made people tremble. At this time, the powerful aura around Lu Fengxian had gradually disappeared. What he had devoured was only the fragment of LV Wenhou's primordial spirit, and it was not even a remnant soul. When his power was stimulated to the extreme just now, what he revealed was only an instinct that belonged to the fragment of LV Wenhou's primordial spirit. Even if LV Wenhou was already dead, he could not be humiliated by an evil creature. At that moment, the demonic qi battle armor around Lu Fengxian's body that could be described as meticulous began to retract. It did not dissipate, but it was fusing into Lu Fengxian's body crazily. Seeing this familiar scene, Fang Qixiao's expression changed a little. Following that, the aura on Lu Fengxian's body began to rise continuously. In the end, it seemed to have broken through a bottleneck and stepped into a new world, advancing to a martial Dao grandmaster. Fang Qixiao slumped on the chair with a sullen expression. After a while, he spat out two words, F***CK. F***CK. To be honest, even Chu Xiu did not expect this to happen. Lu Fengxian actually relied on this pressure to step into the martial Dao grandmaster stage, turning a bad thing into a good thing. Of course, the one who felt the most aggrieved was Fang Qixiao. At that moment, he felt that Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu had teamed up to toy with him. After Zhong Xian advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster, who was the first on the Longhu leaderboard? It was him, Fang Qixiao. Although it was his turn to be the first on the Longhu leaderboard after everyone before him advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster, which was not nice to say, he was at least the first on the Longhu leaderboard, right? In the end, he only sat on the Longhu leaderboard for a short period of time before he was overtaken by the people behind him. Moreover, he did not overtake the first place, but directly advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster and did not mess around with him on the Longhu leaderboard. Ying Bailu and Lu Fengxian were in 3rd place and 4th place respectively. Both of them had overtaken him to become a martial Dao Grandmaster. Fang Qishao could imagine the inhumane treatment he would receive when he returned to Sword King City. Originally, Heavenly King Shen and the others had planned for Fang Qishao to be the 3rd to become a martial Dao Grandmaster. In the end, he did not even have a place in the top 5, let alone 3rd place. Fang Qishao looked at Chu Xiu with a look of exasperation and said, "Brother Chu, I feel that I should really have an unforgettable, passionate love, the kind that doesn't cost money." At that moment, Chu Xiu did not argue with Fang Qishao. Instead, he stared intently at the scene, and at the same time, he tightened his grip on the hilt of the saber at his waist. From the moment Lu Fengxian exposed her aura to fight the 9-tailed celestial fox, to the moment he swept away the remnant soul of the 9-tailed celestial fox with a halberd and became a martial Dao Grandmaster, even an idiot could tell that something was wrong. If the Yunu Palace was not in the wrong, then there was something wrong with Lu Fengxian. At that moment, Uncle Fu sighed beside Ying Bailu and said, "Young master, do you understand now?" Ying Bailu's expression was a little uncertain. Of course, he understood. Although he did not know Lu Fengxian for long, he trusted Lu Fengxian's character. Since Lu Fengxian had promised the Yunu Palace to participate in the sword welcoming meet, she would not cause trouble here. Looking at the elegant and beautiful sky sword soul, it now looked like a ferocious demonic beast, timid and ferocious. How did it look like a sword soul at all? Thinking about it this way, it was very clear who was in the right and who was in the wrong. After a while, Ying Bailu said in a low voice, "Uncle Fu, do Father and the old ancestor know about this?" Uncle Fu nodded and said, "A little, but not too much. If you don't want people to know, don't do it." No matter how well the Yunu Palace hides, there are still some traces. It's just that our Xiangshui clan has no enmity with the Yunu Palace, so we don't want to talk about it. Then why didn't you tell me before? Uncle Fu said with a smile, "Young master, you have the same temper as that young master Lu. Even if the old ancestor told you about it, would you listen to him?" Chapter 772. The Yunu Palace was silent. Everyone had a strange look on their faces. There was definitely a problem with the sword welcoming assembly, but they didn't know which side was the problem. Lin Fengya and Yan Fian were also dumbfounded. This was a scene that they had never imagined would happen. Others might not know the origin of the heavenly sword spirit, but they all knew. In the past, when the ancestors of the Yunu Palace brought the heavenly sword spirit out from the Kunlun devil cult, they had already reached an agreement. Every 100 years, the sword spirit would also protect them for 100 years. In 500 years, the Yunu Palace had already offered sacrifices 5 times. But this time, there was a problem. The 9-tailed celestial fox was in existence at the heaven and earth mystic opening realm at its peak. Even if it was only a remnant soul now, as long as it devoured enough essence, qi, and spirit, it could even rival a true fire spirit refinement realm existence. Lu Fengxian was only at the unity of heaven and man realm. Why was there a problem now? No one could answer their questions. At this moment, the demonic qi and blood color in Lu Fengxian's eyes faded, leaving behind only confusion and sorrow. Why? Yan Fian bit her lips and didn't speak. She couldn't say anything now. Those who understood the current situation naturally understood it. For example, Ying Bailu. But those who didn't understand could see that something was wrong, but they were still in the dark. The Yunu Palace was a righteous sect. Their trump card actually came from the Kunlun devil cult. This was something that would affect their reputation. And previously, the Yunu Palace sacrificed their own disciples. This was actually not a big deal. They did it willingly. Other than affecting their own disciples, no one else would meddle in other people's business. But this time, the Yunu Palace schemed to use Lu Fengxian. So in this situation, Yan Fian couldn't say anything. Lu Fengxian laughed bitterly and shook his head. "I understand. In your heart, no one is more important than the sect, including yourself. I don't want to pursue this matter anymore. But from now on, you and I are strangers. Although Lu Fengxian had already given up on Yanfian, he still couldn't bear to kill Yanfian. However, right at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly stood up and said faintly, "Brother Lu, there are some things that can't be resolved with just a word. This is the way of the world. You don't bully others, but others think you're easy to bully and want to bully you." Seeing Chu Xiu get up, Lu Fengxian sighed and said, "Brother Chu, forget it." Chu Xiu wanted to stand up for him. Lu Fengxian knew that Chu Xiu was doing this for his own good. But in the current situation, even if Lu Fengxian didn't want to kill Yanfian, he wouldn't let Chu Xiu do it either. Because this time was very sensitive to Chu Xiu himself. At this time, the righteous and demonic Dao war had just ended. Regardless if it was the righteous or demonic Dao, they were all very low-key. So the correct approach for Chu Xiu should be to recuperate in a low-key manner, and not like now, making a move and stirring up trouble again. Attracting attention like this was actually not a good thing for Chu Xiu. In a situation that didn't involve him, Lu Fengxian could still see things quite clearly. Chu Xiu held the demonic dance in his hand and walked out step by step, saying coldly, "Forget it? This matter won't be so easily forgotten. Brother Lu, this isn't just your matter. The Yunu Palace schemed against my, Chu Xiu's, good friend. Did you think about my attitude? Don't worry, I won't kill Yanfian, but I still want the Yunu Palace to pay the price." Lin Fengya and Yanfian's expressions changed at the same time. "Chu Xiu. What are you trying to do?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What am I trying to do? Yanfian, do you remember that I warned you last time to behave yourself? But now it looks like you treated my warning like a fart. There will be karma in the future. Some mistakes, you have to bear the price. Didn't your Yunu Palace want to rely on that bastard to protect your Yunu Palace for the next 100 years? Fine, I'll kill this bastard and make your Yunu Palace lose this trump card." At this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox, who had a face full of fear and didn't know whether Lu Wenho was still alive or not, had a dumbfounded look in her eyes. What did it have to do with him? She only made a deal with the Yunu Palace's ancestor. Who the other party sacrificed, she really didn't know at all before. Why did she become the target now instead? Boundless demonic chi lingered on the heavenly demon dance. That ferocious might was several times stronger than before. Slashing down, Chu Xiu went straight for the nine-tailed celestial fox. The entire hall was tainted by that horrifying demonic chi, turning incomparably cold. The nine-tailed celestial fox let out a furious roar. "Do you really think I'm a sick cat if the celestial fox doesn't show its might?" In ancient times, the nine-tailed celestial fox was definitely a peak existence among the ferocious beasts. It could rival the heaven and earth mystic opening realm's supreme powerhouses of the human race. It was a pity that ferocious beasts had limits. No matter how strong a race's ferocious beast was, there was also a limit. But human martial artists didn't have a limit. So in ancient times, when it saw a powerhouse of Lu Wenho's level, it would practically hide. In the end, it had managed to escape the ancient calamity and had just woken up. It wanted to eat a few people to fill its empty stomach, but it had kicked an iron plate. Its body was directly taken by the Red Lotus demon Venerable, and its remnant soul was sealed as a pet. It was fine if these powerhouses didn't take it seriously. In the past, it could kill a whole bunch of people with a sweep of its tail at a level like Chu Xiu. In the end, the nine-tailed celestial fox actually dared to shout and kill in front of it. At this moment, the nine-tailed celestial fox felt that its dignity had been humiliated. Although the nine-tailed celestial fox was only left with a remnant soul and was in its weakest state because it hadn't devoured Lu Fengxian's essence, chi, and spirit, it still had the strength to fight. The 9 fox tails swelled up, and a ferocious aura suddenly erupted, wrapping around Chu Xiu. Everyone present had already retreated to the side when they saw that something was wrong. At this moment, even an idiot could tell that this 9-tailed celestial fox didn't seem to be a sword soul. Although the legendary longswords that could condense a sword soul had different shapes, at least one thing was certain. When it attacked, sword chi would definitely scatter in all directions. However, when the nine-tailed celestial fox attacked, it didn't seem like a sword soul at all. The heavenly demon dance, which carried an endless evil aura, suddenly slashed down and cut off the nine tails. At the same time, a powerful devouring force suddenly came from the heavenly demon dance, constantly devouring the nine-tailed celestial fox's power. There was a murderous intent in the nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes. It roared angrily, and its 9 tails suddenly swelled up, even filling the entire hall. When Chu Xiu cut off one wave, another wave immediately grew out and smashed down. It even shook Chu Xiu's arm, which was holding the saber, to the point that it was trembling. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows gently. To be honest, he had really underestimated this beast. This thing only had a remnant soul left, and it didn't even have a physical body. In the end, it still had such powerful power. It was indeed a powerful beast that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses when it was alive. Just look at the current Lu Jianghu. Even though his remnant soul had been sealed, Lu Jianghu was unable to unleash even the slightest bit of his strength. All he could do was play some illusions inside the blood soul bead. At this moment, seeing Chu Xiu attack, Lin Fengya's expression also changed, and she shouted sternly, "Chu Xiu! You dare touch my Yu Palace's sword soul, you're courting death." Chu Xiu sneered, "Stop pretending, sword soul. Just a beast that was once a pet of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. I said before, you have to pay the price for what you did. Today, I will definitely kill this beast." Lin Fengya gritted her teeth, and regardless of her injuries, she directly held her sword and attacked Chu Xiu. The nine-tailed celestial fox was their Yu Palace's trump card. It could be said that without the nine-tailed celestial fox's protection, all these years, whenever the Yu Palace encountered decline or powerful enemies, they practically relied on the nine-tailed celestial fox's power to stop them. Therefore, in the entire Yu Palace, Yan Fian and the palace lord could die, but nothing could happen to the nine-tailed celestial fox. Open the formation. Following Lin Fengya's angry shout, the entire Yu Palace's formation began to operate. In fact, the Yu Palace's sect-protecting formation wasn't very strong. All these years, the Yu Palace had never produced a martial artist with any attainments in formations. Therefore, even this sect-protecting formation was set up by the Yu Palace's ancestor with the help of other formation masters in the past. But at this time, being able to use a bit of strength was a bit of strength. Lin Fengya also didn't have any other trump cards. But at this moment, Shui Wuxiang sneered and silently formed a seal with both hands. As the formation lit up, countless sharp sword chi swept towards Lin Fengya and the people of the Yu Palace. Caught off guard, Lin Fengya's body was directly attacked by a few sword chi, which worsened her injuries that hadn't fully recovered yet. She immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. It wasn't that Lin Fengya was too weak, but that she really didn't expect that her own formation would actually change direction and attack her. In the past, Shui Wuxiang was the inept military advisor who gave advice and suggestions to Marquis Lv Wenho. Although he ultimately couldn't stop Marquis Lv Wenho from enraging the masses and died, he had already been scheming against the martial artists of the large sect since ancient times. The people of the Yu Palace were still too inexperienced to play tricks with him. Taking advantage of the moment when Lin Fengya and the others were obstructed by the formation, Chu Xiu's demonic saber swept out and his saber force instantly rose to a peak. As the saber slashed down, the saber force surged and the saber force surged. It was like a tsunami tearing the heavens and splitting the earth, drowning and devouring all things. Among the 7 limits, the sea-breaking saber was originally a peerless saber strike. In addition, after Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance had been recast, it had already stepped into the ranks of divine weapons. It also had the characteristic of devouring all things, which overlapped with a portion of the sea-breaking saber intent. The two complemented each other and erupted with even greater power than before. As the saber slashed down, the 9-tailed celestial fox's 9 tails instantly ruptured. This time, they didn't grow back. Instead, it let out a mournful howl. Chapter 773. Lin Fengya had a look of disbelief on her face as she watched Chu Xiu's sea-splitting saber strike heavily injure the nine-tailed celestial fox. That was the trump card of the Yu Palace, but it had been heavily injured by Chu Xiu. What kind of trump card was that? Was there a problem with the nine-tailed celestial fox, or was Chu Xiu too strong, so strong that it was beyond her imagination? In reality, ever since the great battle on floating Jade Mountain, Lin Fengya had been recuperating in the Yu Palace. It had been a long time since she stepped out of the Jianghu. Chu Xiu was an influential figure in the Jianghu, but to Lin Fengya, she had only heard about him through hearsay. As for who Chu Xiu had killed and how he had slain Jinhua and the other spirit refinement realm experts, she had always heard about it. Therefore, she did not have a direct impression of Chu Xiu's strength. Until now, she had seen it. It was so strong that it made people tremble. At this moment, Lin Fengya and Yan Fian both felt a trace of regret. They didn't regret scheming against Lu Fengxian. They only regretted being too careless. They didn't account for the relationship between Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. They also didn't account for Chu Xiu's strength to be this strong. Indeed, LV Fengxian's friends were everywhere in the world. This was true. No one who befriended LV Fengxian had ever said anything bad about him. Even people like Ying Bailu, who didn't have much of a relationship with Lu Fengxian and could only be considered acquaintances, were the same. Even though Lu Fengxian had stolen the person he loved, for some reason, Ying Bailu only felt disappointment and sadness. He didn't feel any hatred in his heart. Yan Fian and Lin Fengya knew this, but they judged him by their own standards. They thought that this kind of friendship was just a dream. It was just a little better than fair-weather friends. When Lu Fengxian's essence, qi, and spirit were devoured and her cultivation was crippled, who would be willing to stand up for him since they weren't from the same sect or family? Jianghu was just that realistic, so Lin Fengya and Yan Fian did not even consider that someone would stand up for Lu Fengxian, who was all alone. Even though Chu Xiu had warned Yan Fian before, she did not take it to heart. But now, they were filled with regret. If they didn't plot against Lu Fengxian, they would at most let the sword spirit go into hibernation, and their Yu Palace would think of other methods. In the end, after scheming against Lu Fengxian, their Yu Palace's final life-saving trump card was gone. At this time, Yan Fian was resisting the sword formation while pleading to Lu Fengxian, "Fengxian, help me, make Chu Xiu stop. This matter is our Yu Palace's fault. After this, I can promise you anything you want. Whatever Chu Xiu wants, our Yu Palace will also agree. I just hope that you can make him stop." But at this time, Lu Fengxian looked at Yan Fian as if she was a stranger. He shook his head and said, "Miss Yan, please call me Lu Fengxian. Also, Brother Chu is standing up for me now. If I make him stop, wouldn't I be letting down Brother Chu's kind intentions? Some things are wrong. I can trust a person, but I won't forgive a person. If you had told me the truth, even if I had to beg Brother Chu or Brother Xia, I would definitely have thought of a way to help your Yu Palace get through this crisis. But now, it's too late." Lu Fengxian was passionate, but he wasn't an idiot. From the moment he stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, he had already cut off all relations with Yan Fian. The two of them were completely strangers. Even if Yan Fian really wanted to risk her life and threaten Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian would even have the intention to kill her. Yan Fian made a wrong choice. She neglected Lu Fengxian's greatest value, which was Lu Fengxian's true connections. It was true that Chu Xiu hated the Yu Palace, and Xia Xiaolu had no relationship with the Yu Palace, but as long as Lu Fengxian asked, they were willing to sell Lu Fengxian a favor. Whether it was Chu Xiu's current forces or the faraway West Chu's World Alliance, it was too easy to protect the Yu Palace. It was a pity that Yan Fian, or the Yu Palace, bought the casket and returned the pearls, and did such a stupid thing. And at this time, the remnant soul of the nine-tailed celestial fox, which had been severely injured by Chu Xiu's sea-breaker saber, had already gone mad. Its eyes were crimson red, and the aura around it was extremely violent. At the location of its 9 tails that had been cut off, 9 streams of mental energy seemed to have solidified, extending and extending endlessly. In the end, it actually turned into a large net that covered the sky and covered the earth, enveloping Chu Xiu. The 9-tailed celestial fox was most proficient in mental energy attacks. However, it was currently in the state of a remnant soul. Previously, it had used its own power to guide the power of heaven and earth to attack, which consumed very little of its remnant soul. But now, it had already begun to consume the power source of its remnant soul. One could imagine that this 9-tailed celestial fox was already starting to fight with its life on the line. Sheathing the saber and forming a seal, the soul-extinguishing arrow was unleashed. The whistling mental energy exploded, but the consecutive arrows were actually unable to completely penetrate the large net of mental energy. At this time, Lu Jianghu said casually, It turned out to be that kid Nangong Wuming's 9 forms of soul assimilation. You actually know the techniques of the demon heart hall. Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghu, but at this time, Lu Jianghu chuckled and said, Kid, why don't we make a deal? You lure this beast into an illusion, then use your mental energy to connect to the blood-soul bead and pull me into the illusion as well. I'll help you subdue this evil beast. It's simple and saves time. How about this? Chu Xiu said lightly, Do you think I'm an idiot, or do you think I can't kill this beast? Since I can kill such a powerful remnant soul myself, why should I let you swallow it to restore your strength? The soul-extinguishing arrow could not penetrate this large net, but Chu Xiu had already used the combination of the extinguishing heaven and earth soul transfer technique and the 9 forms of soul assimilation to the extreme, completely using his mental energy to fight the 9-tailed celestial fox head-on. This beast's strength was indeed not simple. It was already weakened to this state, but it still had such strength. But for Chu Xiu, dealing with it was only a matter of time. The longer it took, the weaker the 9-tailed celestial fox's strength would be. Seeing that Chu Xiu was getting more and more ruthless, Lu Jianghu hurriedly said, All right, I owe you. I'll give you something to exchange for it, how about it? You're mine now. What are you going to give me in exchange? Lu Jianghu gritted his teeth and said, My holy church's secret place with hidden treasures, do you want to exchange? In the past, my holy church's branches were spread all over the Jianghu. Naturally, there were many secret places. Not all of them were thrown on Kunlun Mountain. The things that I personally buried back then, other than me, no one else knows. You also don't have to worry that I'll threaten you after swallowing that remnant soul. The blood soul bead is in your hands. That's like a prison. Unless you take the initiative to break the cage and let me out, letting me obtain the body, otherwise, a remnant soul of mine won't be able to threaten you. Chu Xiu was actually waiting for Lu Jianghu to say this. Although he had squeezed out the blood divine demonic technique from Lu Jianghu, he also knew that Lu Jianghu must still have many secrets or good things. If he didn't squeeze him dry and maximize his remaining value, wouldn't he be at a loss? So when he heard Lu Jianghu say this, Chu Xiu's figure immediately moved forward. The power of his primordial spirit was exerted to the maximum, and completely integrated with the spiritual power net formed by the 9-tailed celestial fox. He took the initiative to pull the remnant soul into his own spiritual world. The 9-tailed celestial fox was very puzzled by Chu Xiu's actions. The ferocious beasts of its lineage were powerful to begin with, but they were most proficient in mental strength. However, Chu Xiu had taken the initiative to pull it into the mental world, using its weak point to attack its strong point. Wasn't this courting death? In the misty spiritual world, the 9-tailed celestial fox's huge body seemed to cover the sky. Its 9 tails that had been cut off by Chu Xiu had already recovered, and it smiled at Chu Xiu ferociously. However, at this moment, a middle-aged man appeared beside Chu Xiu. Blood danced around him as he smiled sinisterly at the 9-tailed celestial fox. Little thing, it's been a long time since we last met. Do you still recognize me? The moment it saw Lu Jianghu, the 9-tailed celestial fox's smile gradually disappeared, and a look of horror appeared in its eyes. It was born in ancient times, and in order to avoid the great ancient calamity, it used a secret method to sleep underground. It could be said that even if it didn't really live for 10,000 years, it was at least an existence that had lived for thousands of years. In all these years, the thing it didn't want to recall the most was the days when it was a pet in the Kunlun devil cult, being watched and played by everyone. Except for the extremely mysterious cult leader, it had seen almost everyone else. And among these people, Lu Jianghe was the most excessive. The others were at most watching something new. After all, the nine-tailed celestial fox had become extinct during the Great Ancient Calamity. It was estimated that there was only one left in the world. At that time, although the Kunlun devil cult had dominated the entire pugilistic world, they had not seen a powerful ferocious beast comparable to the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. However, these people only watched and never took action. Only Lu Jianghe used all kinds of means to play with it all day long. He even said that he was studying ferocious beasts and developing new techniques. It was a time that was unbearable to recall. So now, when the nine-tailed celestial fox saw Lu Jianghe, it still felt a little afraid. However, after the fear, the nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly remembered why it should be afraid. The Kunlun devil cult had been destroyed for hundreds of years, and those terrifying people were already dead. Even if this guy in front of it had become a remnant soul like it, what did it have to be afraid of? So, the nine-tailed celestial fox roared angrily, and the nine tails behind it expanded, as if they covered the sky and the sun, and its momentum was monstrous. Chu Xiu glanced at Lu Jianghe and said, "Can you do it or not? You can easily exhaust it outside, but you have to bring this beast here and add to the trouble." Lu Jianghe sneered and said, "Don't worry, I never do things that I am not confident of." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Jianghe directly formed a seal with both hands. There was no special aura, but at this time, on the head of the nine-tailed celestial fox, a red lotus bloomed. The red lotus was as red as blood, and as it bloomed, it was constantly weakening the power of the nine-tailed celestial fox. When the red lotus bloomed completely, the power of the nine-tailed celestial fox had been suppressed to the point of almost nothingness. Its entire body became the size of a husky, and it looked quite cute. Chapter 774. In the past, the strength of the Kunlun devil cult was far beyond many people's expectations. If it wasn't for the fact that the old celestial master was born in that era, others wouldn't be able to understand the true strength of the Kunlun devil cult just by hearsay. They were both at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but Yi Xiaonan was able to defeat both Su Ci and the Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, at the same time. This proved that no matter what realm a martial artist reached, there was a huge gap. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult was the same. The four demon lords were definitely experts in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. The Red Lotus demon lord had easily captured the nine-tailed celestial fox and locked it up like a pet. Of course, he had done something. The Red Lotus demon lord had done something to the nine-tailed celestial fox's soul remnant to prevent it from running around. That's right, the Red Lotus demon lord wasn't even worried that it would escape. He was only worried that it would run around. Other than the Red Lotus demon lord himself, only Lu Jianghe knew about this. Of course, this didn't mean that Lu Jianghe was close to the Red Lotus demon lord. It was only because Lu Jianghe wanted to study the nine-tailed celestial fox, so he asked the Red Lotus demon lord for it. He didn't expect it to come in handy now. Lu Jianghe waved his hand, and the Red Lotus demon lord completely wrapped the nine-tailed celestial fox. It shrank to the size of a palm and returned to Lu Jianghe's hand. Done. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. The talkative fake demon lord had been hiding something from him. He had always known about this trick, but he had never said it. Even if the nine-tailed celestial fox was stronger than it was now, strong enough to kill Chu Xiu, Lu Jianghe wouldn't have said it. Chu Xiu's blood soul bead wouldn't break even if he died. If he fell into someone else's hands, he might be able to trick them into letting him out. So why did he say it? Of course, Chu Xiu did not pursue Lu Jianghe's petty thoughts. This kind of thing was very normal. On the contrary, with Lu Jianghe's character, it would be strange if he always behaved himself. After coming out of the spiritual world, the nine-tailed celestial fox's aura had completely dissipated. Even the celestial sword, which was the vessel, had lost its luster. This thing was originally used as a container to hold the nine-tailed celestial fox. Now that the thing inside was gone, it naturally lost its value. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Lin Fengya stared blankly at all of this. Her eyes were still filled with disbelief. The sword soul of their Yunu palace was gone just like that? At this moment, Lin Fengya even felt that she was the Yunu palace's sinner. The Yunu palace would definitely decline in her generation. Whether it was Lin Fengya or the entire Yunu palace, they had already reached a dead end. The Yunu palace had a long history, but in reality, the ancestor of the Yunu palace, the Yunu, was not their true ancestor. This was because the Yunu had never intended to accept disciples. According to the legends, the Yunu sword technique was a gift from heaven. She only used a bamboo pole to defeat numerous experts in the pugilistic world. However, the true Yunu sword technique was not passed down by the Yunu. Instead, she had casually given a few pointers to a little girl who was being bullied and left. That little girl was the true ancestor of the Yunu palace. Therefore, from the beginning, the Yunu sword technique of the Yunu palace was incomplete. At the same time, it was utilitarian. It was far inferior to the true Yunu sword technique of the Yunu palace. Only a few exceptional geniuses could comprehend the true essence of the Yunu sword technique from these incomplete sword techniques. Therefore, the Yunu palace's early days were actually like this. Strength was all up to fate. However, at some point in time, the Yunu palace gradually became utilitarian. They were no longer willing to wait for a good disciple to appear. Instead, they wanted to be like the other sects and have stable strength. The existence of the nine-tailed celestial fox was a mistake of the Yunu palace. The Yunu palace's trump card was actually their Yunu sword technique. As long as they put effort into it, they would have everything. In the end, the Yunu palace placed everything on external objects. They became less and less interested in the Yunu sword technique. The Yunu palace's current state was their own fault. Of course, Lin Fengya would not admit to these things. Even if it was her fault, in her heart, Chu Xiu had become the culprit who destroyed the Yunu palace's trump card. Chu Xiu. The Yunu palace will not rest until you are dead. Lin Fengya roared angrily. Sword chi swirled around her, and there were even blood-colored shadows coiling around her blade. When the sword slashed out, the biting sharpness instantly tore the formation apart. It went straight for Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu couldn't help but sneer when he saw that Lin Fengya was actually burning her essence blood to kill him. The Yunu palace's Yunu sword technique was a sword bestowed by the heavens. The weaker one's mental state was, the closer they were to the will of heaven and earth. Only then would they be able to unleash their greatest power. At this moment, Lin Fengya's mental state was in a mess. All that was left was hatred and killing. The sword intent she used was completely different from the Yunu sword technique. It would be strange if she could unleash its true power. Of course, even if she was at her peak, she would not be Chu Xiu's match. There was no difference. The heavenly demon dance slashed down with dense demonic chi. There were faint wails of hungry ghosts within it. It devoured the sword chi. With a boom, it shattered Lin Fengya's sword and even sent her flying. She coughed up a mouthful of blood. Looking at Lin Fengya, Chu Xiu's eyes were also filled with killing intent. At this moment, he was indeed only helping LV Fengxian vent her anger. Doing this much was actually already enough. However, Chu Xiu's personality was like this. Either he didn't do it, or he did it to the extreme. He destroyed the Yunu palace's sword soul, causing them to lose their trump card. It was certain that they would not be able to recover from this setback. However, it was not enough. Chu Xiu even wanted to destroy the Yunu palace. Anyway, he had already offended the Yunu palace. If he did not make a move now, it would be troublesome to leave behind an enemy who secretly hated him. In for a penny, in for a pound. He would destroy the Yunu palace. Of course, Chu Xiu could not do it himself. After all, there was still Yan Fian. Chu Xiu also had to consider Lu Fengxian's feelings. However, Yan Fian could not be killed. Chu Xiu had no qualms about killing Lin Fengya. Although Chu Xiu rarely killed women, when he really wanted to kill someone, there was no difference between men and women in his eyes. Demonic chi lingered on the heavenly demon dance as it slashed towards Lin Fengya. The demonic chi blade engulfed everything. It looked like this blade was about to behead Lin Fengya. However, at this moment, a long sword shining with pure yang energy suddenly appeared in front of Lin Fengya. The sword split into three and the three sword lights merged into one, blocking Chu Xiu's blade. However, the pure yang energy also dissipated. The old Taoist priest from the pure yang Dao sect snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, don't think that you can behave atrociously as you wish just because the demonic Dao managed to escape the calamity in this war between the righteous and demonic Dao. It's not like there's no one in the righteous Dao sect. There were too many things involved in the Yunu Palace incident." The old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect was not an idiot. He could naturally see that something was wrong. If it was someone else, the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect would definitely not intervene. However, the person who appeared in front of him was Chu Xiu. Chunyang Dao sect had a great enmity with Chu Xiu. He had no reason to not make a move. Moreover, the Yunu Palace belonged to the righteous Dao sect, while Chu Xiu belonged to the demonic Dao sect. There were so many people here today, but they allowed Chu Xiu, a fellow from the demonic Dao, to be so arrogant. It was simply preposterous. Sun Qili and Sun Qifan of the Sun clan looked at each other and walked out as well. Sun Qili coughed and said, "Chu Xiu, where it is possible to forgive, one should forgive. There are so many people here, do you really want to destroy the Yunu Palace?" The people from the Jiangdong Sun clan had always been low-key and slick. They would not be like the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect who stood out to protect Lin Fengya. However, it was not a problem for them to exert some pressure on Chu Xiu from the back. Let people off when possible? The only thing that I, Chu Xiu, can spare is a dead person. As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit power condensed in Chu Xiu's hand. The soul-destroying arrows shot out consecutively towards the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect. Today, he was determined to kill Lin Fengya. It was a joke if they thought they could stop him with just a few stray chickens and stray dogs. If Chu Xiu was really angered, he would kill the old Taoist as well. After all, he had killed more than one or two Chunyang Dao sect martial artists. The old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect snorted coldly. Under his control, the three Dao swords formed the three talent sword formation. In an instant, pure yang energy flourished and illuminated the entire hall in a golden color. The soul-extinguishing arrow was a spiritual attack, but the three great sword array was quite miraculous. Under the attack of the pure yang gang qi, the power of the soul-extinguishing arrow was reduced by 90%. The old Daoist priest could easily withstand the remaining power. Chu Xiu took a step forward and the demonic flames around him surged into the sky. The sea-breaking saber slashed down. The saber aura that could devour everything seemed to drown the entire hall. It was sharp and turbulent. Before the saber aura arrived, the saber intent had already sent chills down everyone's spine. This could be said to be the ultimate power of the saber slashed down. The three talent sword formation shattered with a loud bang. The old Taoist vomited blood and retreated. Sun Qifan and Sun Qili formed a fist seal and instantly condensed cold ice energy into a shield. They placed it in front of the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect to help him block the remaining erosion of the saber intent. With a loud bang, the ice shield shattered. The endless chill spread towards Chu Xiu as if it wanted to freeze the heaven and earth essence qi. Chu Xiu took a step forward expressionlessly and executed the great sun-changing technique. The demonic aura dissipated and only the scorching Buddha's light covered the sky. Vairocana's shadow hovered behind Chu Xiu. His hand formed the colorless sealing palm seal and instantly strangled everything. Palm strike after palm strike landed. The crushing power caused the Sun brothers to retreat step by step. Their expressions changed drastically. Chu Xiu's power was so strong that it was unreasonable. After retreating more than 100 feet, they suddenly heard a whistling sound. Their expressions changed abruptly. However, before they could react, the soul-destroying arrows had already penetrated Lin Fengya's brain. Her face instantly turned pale. In the blink of an eye, she lost all signs of life. She was killed on the spot by Chu Xiu. Chapter 775. Lin Fengya's death caused the entire Yunu Palace to fall into silence. Almost everyone was dumbfounded, and some people didn't even have time to react. The Yunu Palace was a member of the 5 major sword sects and a major righteous Dao sect. There were many righteous Dao martial artists who were invited to participate in the sword welcoming conference, and these people didn't really think of watching from the sidelines. Previously, they were still thinking of letting the old Taoist from the Qinyang Dao sect and the Sun brothers exhaust Chu Xiu first. Then, at the critical moment, they would save Lin Fengya and force Chu Xiu to not dare to fight to the death. That way, the matter would be resolved perfectly. After all, 99% of the people here were from righteous Dao sections. Letting a guy like Chu Xiu, who had just made a name for himself in the righteous Dao war, be so presumptuous here would not look good on their faces. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would act so quickly that it was beyond their imagination? Before they could prepare to make a move, Lin Fengya had already been beheaded. Moreover, when Chu Xiu fought 1 against 3, his power was simply unstoppable. If 1 or 2 ordinary people went up, they would simply be courting death. So now, Chu Xiu was standing in the main hall of the Yunu Palace, a righteous Dao sect, killing wantonly, but not a single person stood up. The entire place was incomparably quiet. After the old Taoist from the Qinyang Dao sect was injured, he didn't make another move. It was true that he wanted to kill the devil, Chu Xiu, but Lin Fengya was already dead, and the others didn't make a move. If he went up alone, it would be no different from courting death. The Sun brothers even silently retreated to the side. At the same time, they glared fiercely at Sun Zhongming, meaning to not find trouble with Chu Xiu in the future. Otherwise, the consequences would be unpredictable. Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed as he swept his gaze over everyone present. His imposing aura caused everyone present to be unable to meet his gaze. Sensing that something was wrong with the atmosphere, Fang Qishao poked Luo Feiheng and whispered, "Hey, don't tell me that Chu Xiu is addicted to killing and wants to kill everyone here?" To be honest, although there were many martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming meet, apart from Chu Xiu, there was no one from the righteous sects who were famous in the Jianghu and even ranked on the Fengyun list. The Yunu Palace had already been weakened to such a state. Considering that the other party was a righteous sect, one of the 5 great sword sects, with an invitation from the Yunu Palace, all the great sects would give face to the Yunu Palace. As long as they had free martial artists, they would send them to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. Therefore, almost all the warriors who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly had a certain status and strength in the sect, but they were not famous. If Chu Xiu really wanted to get rid of all of them, with the help of the formation that Shui Wuxiang had tampered with, it was really not a difficult task. On the other side, Luo Feiheng shrugged and said, "Who knows? Anyway, I know that guy could really do such a thing." But fortunately, Chu Xiu was not that crazy. With so many martial arts masters, if they were forced into a corner, they would put aside all their prejudices and attack together, which could really bring trouble to Chu Xiu. Most importantly, this was Eastern Qi, and this time, 90% of the martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly were from Eastern Qi. Once Chu Xiu let one of them escape, the other party would spread the news that Chu Xiu had killed all the martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. Before Chu Xiu returned to northern Yan, he would be endlessly hunted. Probably even the moon-worshipping cult did not have such a high profile, coming here to cause trouble right after the righteous and demonic path war, and making such a big scene. The disciples of the Yunu Palace looked at Chu Xiu with a face full of hatred, but no one dared to come forward to die. Their palace lord was killed by Chu Xiu, so what was the use of them coming forward? At this time, Yan Fian had a dull look on her face, as if she still could not believe what had happened in front of her. You should be glad that I am a person who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, and I don't kill women. But what the Yu Palace has done is a little too much, so let the people of the pugilistic world judge it. Don't worry, the details of the Yu Palace will spread throughout the pugilistic world by the next day. I have a good relationship with the vice leader of the wind-sweeping building, Shi Yuanli, so I believe he will be very happy to spread such good gossip. Chu Xiu said this slowly, but Yan Fian suddenly trembled. She looked at Chu Xiu with endless fear in her eyes, and said hatefully, Chu Xiu. You're ruthless. Chu Xiu did not kill them now, but he did not leave the Yu Palace a way out. Lin Fengya was dead, and the Yu Palace's trump card, the sword spirit, was also gone. Right now, the Yu Palace could be said to be at its weakest. Therefore, the Yu Palace's only hope was their reputation as one of the 5 great sword sects, as well as the connections they had accumulated as a righteous sect. They were all women, and if they came to ask for help, there would probably be a lot of people who would agree to help them. But now, Chu Xiu had completely extinguished this hope of theirs. Chu Xiu had the wind-sweeping building spread all this to destroy their reputation. At that time, no one would be willing to help a Yu Palace with a bad reputation. Moreover, over the years, the Yu Palace had offended many people. Now that those people knew that the Yu Palace's trump card had been completely crippled, and their reputation was also bad, even if they targeted the Yu Palace, no one would meddle. How could those people let the Yu Palace off? Therefore, Yan Fian could imagine what the Yu Palace would face next. It would only delay the destruction of the Yu Palace. Yan Fian looked at Lu Fengxian in despair. Right now, the only person who could save the Yu Palace and make Chu Xiu stop was Lu Fengxian. Chu Xiu wanted to vent for Lu Fengxian, but the Yu Palace was already crippled, and Lin Fengya was already dead. Could it be that he would only be satisfied when the Yu Palace was destroyed? But Lu Fengxian only sighed softly and stood up. Under Yan Fian's expectant gaze, he said to Chu Xiu, Brother Chu, let's go. Chu Xiu nodded, waved his hand, and led everyone away with large strides. In the entire area, no one dared to stop them, and no one dared to say a word. Seeing Yan Fian's gaze turn from expectant to despair, Fang Qishao couldn't help but shake his head. You're too smart for your own good. Why bother? Fang Qishao and Yan Fian could actually be considered old acquaintances. Both of them were outstanding figures of the younger generation of the 5 great sword sects, and were both groomed as heirs. Therefore, the two of them had already known each other many years ago. In the past, Sword King City even wanted to matchmake Fang Qishao and Yan Fian, but due to the rules of the Yu Palace, this matter was quickly dropped. Moreover, at that time, Fang Qishao discovered that Yan Fian was not a woman who was easy to deal with. She was too scheming. In the end, the dignified fairy Cloud's word had fallen to such a state. Even the Yu Palace didn't know when it would be destroyed. Of course, all of this could only be said to be Yan Fian's fault. The Yu Palace only had itself to blame. He didn't have the slightest intention to speak up for the Yu Palace. After walking out of the Yu Palace, Lu Fengxian bowed deeply to Chu Xiu. Brother Chu, thank you very much this time. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, if we say thanks to each other, it would be too formal. Back then, when I was besieged by so many people from the righteous Dao Alliance, you also helped me without thinking. Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly. It's not the same. Back then, even without me, Brother Chu, you could still get through the crisis. But this time, without Brother Chu, I'm afraid I would be miserable. Don't look at how Lu Fengxian stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm on the spot. In fact, without Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian's situation would be equally dangerous. Having just stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, Lu Fengxian was actually in the most dangerous stage. Without seclusion to sort out her power, Lu Fengxian couldn't control the martial Dao true core in her body at all. So at that time, if Lin Fengye had made up her mind and completely shed all pretense of cordiality, and joined forces with the nine-tailed celestial fox to forcefully devour Lu Fengxian's essence, qi, and spirit, he also couldn't resist. At the side, Luo Feiheng couldn't help but say, I say, Brother Lu, it's not that I want to criticize you, but since you knew the consequences would be terrible, why did you trust that woman so easily? Even if you were a little more cautious, this situation wouldn't have happened. Beautiful women are the best at lying. Brother Lu, you're not being lustful. You know it's a pit of fire, but you still jumped in. You want to see if it's hot or not. Lu Fengxian looked at Luo Feiheng and said very seriously, you're also very beautiful, but would you lie to me? If someone told me that you wanted to harm me, I wouldn't believe them either. Whether there's fire in the pit of fire or not, you can only find out by jumping in. If you suspect someone you trust without knowing if there's fire in the pit of fire, then the fire in your heart will be extinguished, and it will make one's heart cold. Luo Feiheng was speechless and didn't know what to say. She slapped her head and waved her hand. Forget it, I can't persuade you anymore. To be honest, I've never seen someone as lucky as you to be able to live until now without being cheated to death. Brother Lu, you should really go and pray to the gods and bodhisattvas. At the side, Chu Xiu didn't mind. In the original plot, Lu Fengxian was cheated even more miserably. Now, Lu Fengxian was only schemed against by the Yunu Palace. In the original plot, Lu Fengxian took the blame for Nie Donglu and was treated as the successor of the Kunlun devil cult. She was chased by the righteous sects for a long time. Of course, this situation was impossible to happen now. Nie Donglio's grave would probably have fruits growing on it. Brother Lu, come back to the suppression martial hall with me for this period of time. Stabilize your realm first, said Chu Xiu. After stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, one would need a period of closed-door cultivation to stabilize their realm. At this time, one would need a safe place, and Chu Xiu's suppression martial hall was very suitable. At the side, Fang Qi Shao interrupted, I want to go too. Brother Lu, you and Ing Bailu have cheated me badly. Both of you have stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm one after another. If I return to Sword King City now, I'll probably be cursed to death by those old men. Chu Xiu glanced at Fang Qi Shao. It doesn't matter if you die sooner or later. Even if you go back after breaking through to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, you'll still be cursed. As the saying goes, the earlier you die, the earlier you reincarnate. The longer you drag it out, the more cursed you'll be when you return. As a person, be more open-minded. At least among the martial artists of your generation, there's still Li Feilian who hasn't stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. He'll be accompanying you. Chapter 776. Before Chu Xiu returned to Northern Yan, he made a trip to Wind Sweeping Tower. Since he said he was going to destroy the Yunu Palace, he had to do it. Even if he didn't do it himself, Chu Xiu had to add fuel to the fire. The vice leader of Wind Sweeping Tower, three-eyed god Qi Yuanli, could be considered an old acquaintance of Chu Xiu. He had even watched Chu Xiu grow up. In the past, Chu Xiu was just an ordinary wandering cultivator. But now, Chu Xiu had grown into an existence that Qi Yuanli could look up to. So when he saw Chu Xiu again, Qi Yuanli couldn't help but sigh. Of course, Chu Xiu had a good impression of Qi Yuanli. This vice leader's personality was in line with Wind Sweeping Tower's position. Wind Sweeping Tower didn't participate in the disputes of the Jianghu. They were just a collector of information and a recorder of the history of the Jianghu. Selling information was just a way for Wind Sweeping Tower to make a living. If they did not sell information, there was no way Wind Sweeping Tower could afford to support such a large number of news agents in the world of martial artists. They also had a messaging matrix that was spread all over the world of martial artists, which allowed any news to spread through the entire world of martial artists within a day. But all of this was just a way to make a living. Wind Sweeping Tower wanted to be the witness of the prosperous Jianghu. They didn't want to miss any details. Official Chu, what information do you want to buy this time? But let me say this first. The current situation is sensitive. Some information about some big sections. Even if you want to buy it, I won't dare to sell it. Although Wind's sweeping tower treated all customers equally, Qi Yuanli still felt a headache when he saw Chu Xiu at this time. Not long after the war between the righteous and demonic factions, Chu Xiu jumped out to cause trouble. He was so high profile that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. Qi Yuanli already knew what happened in the Yunu Palace before Chu Xiu came. After all, Wind's sweeping tower's information spread faster than Chu Xiu's legs. However, there were still some details that Qi Yuanli didn't know, so in his opinion, this time it was Chu Xiu who was stirring up trouble. Chu Xiu sat in front of Qi Yuanli and shook his head. Tower Lord Qi, there's no need to be nervous. I'm not here to buy information, I'm here to give you a piece of information. Oh. What news? The truth about the Yunu Palace incident. Chu Xiu said word by word. Upon hearing Chu Xiu's words, Qi Yuanli immediately perked up. Oh, so there's something else going on? The Yunu Palace's sword welcoming assembly was held once every 100 years. It wasn't some grand event of the Jianghu, and it didn't have any definite connection with other martial artists. Therefore, Wind's sweeping tower did not pay much attention to the entire sword welcoming assembly. Wind's sweeping tower had heard about what had happened in the Yunu Palace from the other cultivators who had participated in the sword welcoming meet, so it wasn't comprehensive. After Chu Xiu told Qi Yuanli what had happened, Qi Yuanli couldn't help but sigh. To be honest, he didn't expect the Yunu Palace to have such a secret. 500 years ago, many righteous sects had divided the Kunlun devil cult, and the good stuff had already been taken by those peak sections. Although the Yunu Palace's strength was not bad, and the Yunu Palace from 500 years ago was even stronger than it was now, and it had produced true fire spirit refinement realm experts, but compared to those peak sects, it was still lacking. Therefore, everyone thought that the good stuff didn't fall into the hands of the Yunu Palace. Who would have thought that the Yunu Palace would take a different path and find an ornamental object, with the remnant soul of an ancient fierce beast sealed within? One had to know that the remnant soul of a heaven and earth profound understanding realm fierce beast was a treasure that couldn't be replicated. It was definitely not inferior to other treasures. It could only be said that the Kunlun devil cult was too strong, to the point that they could treat treasures as playthings. Moreover, Qi Yuanli sighed in his heart at the Yunu Palace's actions over the years. They had clearly gone astray. They pursued the power in front of them too much, and in the end, they neglected the sect's future. In the past 500 years, the Yunu Palace had sacrificed 5 young elites that could be ranked on the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. Although these young elites might not become great figures that could stir up the world in the future, they at least had the possibility. In the end, the Yunu Palace sacrificed them, and this possibility was completely cut off. In this generation, the Yunu Palace could be said to be extremely weak. In the end, they still did such a stupid thing and angered Chu Xiu. Now, the Yunu Palace probably wouldn't have a next generation. Qi Yuanli collected all kinds of information in the world all day long, and he was very clear about Chu Xiu's plans. He immediately understood that Chu Xiu wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. Once the news about the Yunu Palace spread, its reputation would be ruined. Those who had enmity with the Yunu Palace, or even those who didn't have enmity with the Yunu Palace, no one could guarantee what they would do. However, Qi Yuanli didn't resist this kind of thing. What Wind's sweeping tower wanted was information and the truth. As for what this information and the truth would bring, it wasn't something Wind's sweeping tower could control. Moreover, Wind's sweeping tower wasn't afraid of the Yunu Palace coming to find trouble. To put it bluntly, with the current strength of the Yunu Palace, they weren't even afraid of the anemophilia that specialized in intelligence. Qi Yuanli showed a tacit smile to Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu's information is quite useful. Tomorrow, Wind's sweeping tower's headline will be the secret of the Yunu Palace, as well as 3 Dragon and Tiger leaderboard elites stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm in a short few days. I reckon that this news will definitely shock the entire world." Fang Qishao said gloomily, "Tower Lord Qi, you're wrong. I haven't stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. As Fang Qixiao said that, he cursed inwardly. This Qi Yuanli's math isn't good, but his eyes aren't good either. Can't he tell that I'm not a martial Dao grandmaster? Qi Yuanli chuckled. Young Master Fang must be joking. I'm not the Tower Lord, I'm only the Vice Tower Lord. Also, I didn't calculate wrongly. Ying Bailu, Little Marquis Wen, and Li Feilian have all stepped into the martial Dao grandmaster realm in the past few days. Of course, it's 3 of them. What did you say? Li Feilian has also become a martial Dao grandmaster? Fang Qixiao's expression was no longer F** king a dog, it was simply F** king a dog. Qi Yuanli nodded and said, it was yesterday's news. Li Feilian battled the Chunyang Dao sect's martial Dao grandmaster Huanyangzi in West Chu and killed him with 3 slashes, stepping into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. Fang Qixiao's expression was wooden. He could not even be bothered to say F** ck at this moment. At this moment, Fang Qixiao even felt that the entire world was against him. Chu Xiu was also slightly speechless by the side. To be honest, Fang Qixiao had actually gone further than Ying Bailu and Lu Fengxian. After so many years, who had seen Fang Qixiao fight to the death and unleash his full strength? However, breaking through to the martial Dao grandmaster realm required time and opportunity. In the past, Fang Qixiao did not take such things seriously and was not in a hurry. In fact, he had even touched the threshold several times, but he felt that he did not accumulate enough, so he did not take that step. In the end, when he felt that he had accumulated enough and wanted to take that step, the bottleneck was even higher than before. After being surpassed by 3 people in a row, Fang Qixiao really did not want to return to Sword King City at this moment. He estimated that once he returned, he would not be able to leave until he stepped into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. After leaving Wind's sweeping building, Chu Xiu took Lu Fengxian back to Northern Yen. Fang Qixiao did not follow them and returned to Sword King City directly. Although Fang Qixiao said that he did not want to return to Sword King City, he still went back and took the initiative to go into closed-door cultivation. This time, Chu Xiu could see that Fang Qixiao's pride seemed to have been hurt. Even if Fang Qixiao did not care much about being surpassed by the people behind him as the first on the Longhu list, he still cared about his pride. Don't be fooled by the fact that he was always laughing and joking all day long, as if he didn't care about anything, but he still had a competitive heart. In the past, he did not work hard and left everything to fate. But this time, Fang Qixiao was really ready to take it seriously. As Chu Xiu returned to Northern Yen, the news of Wind's sweeping building also spread throughout the underworld. The fact that 3 Longhu list prodigies stepped into the martial Dao grandmaster realm did not cause too much of a stir. What really caused a stir was the truth of the Yunu Palace's sword welcoming assembly. It was not a good thing to talk about. In any case, the Yunu Palace's reputation plummeted in a day. This matter even caused many people to discuss whether the immediate benefits were more important or the sect's future development. Although most people were denouncing the Yunu Palace's short-sightedness, in fact, most people knew that if they were in their shoes, they would most likely make the same choice. If their sect could be as powerful as Sword King City, they naturally would not exchange their own disciples for immediate benefits. For a sect like Sword King City, they could afford to raise a rare genius in the Sword Dao like the 7th young Master Fang. They could also afford to raise a young disciple like Lin Kaiyun, whose talent could only be considered decent. But for some ordinary forces, they could afford to raise such geniuses, but there was no guarantee that they would become supreme powerhouses who could stir up the underworld in the future. On the contrary, if they were sacrificed to the 9-tailed fox, they could obtain the 9-tailed fox's protection for 100 years. As long as they successfully devoured the martial artist's mental qi, the 9-tailed fox's remnant soul at its peak could even exert power stronger than a true fire spirit refinement powerhouse. Everyone wanted to have a long-term vision, but unfortunately, the price of having a long-term vision was how they should get through the crisis in front of them. Of course, these things were not what Chu Xiu would consider. He had already laid out the trap. Only God knew how long the Yunu Palace could last. However, just as Chu Xiu returned to Martial Suppression Hall in Northern Yen, Mei Qinglian came to find him. She heaved a long sigh and said, you're finally back. That old guy Xiang Long has sent people to urge you several times recently. I'm afraid the imperial court won't allow you to delay. Chapter 777. Before Chu Xiu went to Eastern Qi, Xiang Long had looked for him and asked him to go to the Great Light Temple to garrison. However, Chu Xiu had rejected the request and did not take it seriously. Xiang Long wanted to provoke the Great Light Temple at this time, but Chu Xiu did not want to be the knife in his hand. Originally, Chu Xiu had thought that by going to Eastern Qi and purposely evading the matter, he would be able to get away with it. He did not expect Xiang Long to still insist on going to the Temple of Great Light to station troops there. There was no value in the bitter cold of the far north. Apart from angering the Great Light Temple, there was basically no benefit to the Northern Yan court. At this time, there was movement outside the Jianghu hall. A eunuch from the palace walked in. When he saw Chu Xiu, his eyes suddenly lit up and he quickly said, "Official Chu, His Majesty has been waiting for you for a long time. Now that you have finally returned from Eastern Qi, His Majesty invites you to the palace for a discussion." Chu Xiu shook his head gently. This time, he might not be able to avoid it. Therefore, he asked Mei Qinglian to help make arrangements for Lu Fengxian while he followed the eunuch to the palace. In the main hall of the Northern Yan Palace, Chu Xiu saw Xiang Long again. Compared to the last time, Xiang Long's face showed obvious signs of aging. Even his aura was weaker. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He could roughly guess why Xiang Long was so persistent. It was not that Xiang Long was old and muddle-headed, but this mighty ruler of Northern Yan did not have much longer to live. This Northern Yan ruler had spent half of his life in the military and used half of his power to develop the Northern Yan. He had used all kinds of tricks and schemes to surpass Eastern Qi. Finally, he had developed the Northern Yan into a country that was comparable to Eastern Qi. However, with the foundation and potential of the Northern Yan, there were too many things for Xiang Long to handle, and it was too much for him to handle. Take the Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haocheng, for example. He was a famous mediocre emperor who did not want to think about anything else other than stability. That was why he had the time to cultivate his body and mind, almost causing his son to die of exhaustion. Even if Xiang Long had the false reputation of being a heavenly treasure, he would only be drinking poison to quench his thirst. The effect would not be too great. Before he died, he wanted to leave behind a stable and complete Northern Yan for his descendants. This was perhaps Xiang Long's last wish. At this time, when he saw Chu Xiu coming, Xiang Long snorted and said, "Chu Xiu, you are the governor of my Northern Yan's Jianghu Hall. I have given you such an important position, but you run away all day. What is this?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "Your Majesty, you have wronged me. I am alone outside, but I have not delayed the matters of Jianghu Hall. In the beginning, I made an agreement with Your Majesty that Jianghu Hall could help to suppress the Northern Yan martial arts. Now, the Northern Yan martial arts is very stable and peaceful. What difference does it make whether I am there or not?" Xiang Long snorted coldly and said, "I am too lazy to argue with you about these trivial matters. I have told you before that the Northern Yan will station troops in the bitter and cold land of the extreme north. Your Jianghu Hall will be responsible for spearheading the attack. Do you know about this?" Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Your Majesty, you have seen the strength of the great Guangming Temple. Stationing troops in the bitter and cold land of the extreme north is tantamount to provoking the great Guangming Temple. The consequences are hard to imagine." Xiang Long was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Chu Xiu, do you think that I have lost my mind? Do I have to stir up trouble at this critical moment and provoke those monks?" Chu Xiu did not speak, but obviously, this was what he meant. Xiang Long suddenly laughed, and then his face instantly turned gloomy. He said coldly, "I am the Emperor of the Northern Yan. The thousands of miles of the Northern Yan territory are all mine. But the monks of the great Guangming Temple have no regard for me, nor for the Northern Yan. Before you went to Eastern Qi, an old monk of the Dharma Hall of the great Guangming Temple passed by Donglin County. Because Nan Xinli, the general of the Iron Guards of Donglin County, was a rogue cultivator of diabolism and was practicing diabolism with prisoners on death row in the military camp. He sensed his aura and broke into the military camp alone. He killed Nan Xinli and hundreds of Northern Yen soldiers before finally leaving. In the eyes of those monks, they only care about their own right and wrong. When have I ever existed in their eyes? Is it possible that one day, when someone in my palace practices demonic arts, they will also kill their way into my palace? After listening to Xiang Long's words, Chu Xiu's eyebrows suddenly twitched. At this time, he did not know how to describe the monks of the Great Guangming Temple. Is there really something wrong with these bald donkeys? Other places are not enough for you to show off your strength. How dare you break into the Northern Yen military camp alone to kill people? To be honest, if this kind of thing happened to Chu Xiu, he would not be able to tolerate it either. If the monks of the Great Guangming Temple had the intention, the imperial court could still negotiate with them to find out what the conflict was between the two sides. But the problem was that the old monk of the Great Guangming Temple did it unintentionally. He only felt that someone was practicing diabolism with human lives. Well, it did not matter if the other party was the general of the Northern Yen, and it did not matter if the other party practiced diabolism with prisoners on death row. In any case, he would be killed. From this point, it could be seen that the monks of the Great Guangming Temple had never taken the Northern Yen imperial court seriously. It was no wonder that Xiang Long was so angry. However, Xiang Long's anger was his business. Chu Xiu did not intend to help Xiang Long die. Therefore, Chu Xiu said directly, "Your Majesty, the Zhenwu Hall can help you with other matters. But this matter is no different from courting death. The abbot of the Great Guangming Temple has already stepped into the metaphysical realm of heaven and earth. If you anger him, who will stop him?" Xiang Long snorted and said, "If this matter was so simple, why would I look for you? You decide the scale of this matter yourself. I only want the result, not the process." Chu Xiu still wanted to say something, but at this moment, Lu Jianghu suddenly said, "Kid, agree to it." In the past, the Blood Demon Hall buried their treasures in the cold land of the extreme north, not far from the Great Guangming Temple. Chu Xiu said doubtfully, "Are you joking? You are a member of the Kunlun Devil cult, but you placed the treasures in the vicinity of the Great Guangming Temple?" Lu Jianghu laughed coldly and said, "So what? With the power of the sacred cult in the past, as long as the items are not placed in the latrine of the abbot of the Great Guangming Temple, they can be placed anywhere. In the past, when the Patriarch Dugu was still around, the Great Guangming Temple was so scared that they did not even dare to step out of their mountain gates. Only by placing the treasures there will it be safe enough." Lu Jianghu would not lie to him about this matter, so when he heard Lu Jianghu say this, Chu Xiu could only put on an expression as if he had no choice but to submit. He said in a low voice, "As you wish, Your Majesty." If there were no orders from the imperial court, Chu Xiu would probably be suspected by the people of the Great Guangming Temple if he rashly went near the Great Guangming Temple. With the imperial court's orders, Chu Xiu had an additional excuse. Of course, on the surface, he still had to put on an expression of helplessness that he had only agreed to it. After Chu Xiu left, an old eunuch appeared behind Xiang Long. It was Xiang Long's personal eunuch, Eunuch Han. He said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, this official Chu seems to be very unwilling. If you force him like this, will there be any accidents?" Xiang Long snorted coldly, "This gang of Jianghu people are so wild and hard to tame." Unwilling? With me, there is no such thing as willing or unwilling, only what can be done and what cannot be done. At this point, Xiang Long's voice suddenly became softer. He sighed and said, "I don't have much time left." The Northern Yen is inherently weak and cannot compete with the Eastern Qi, which is located in the Central Plains. In this generation, even with my painstaking efforts, coupled with the fact that Eastern Qi's Lu Haochang is basically an incompetent person, we can only temporarily suppress the Eastern Qi. However, the strength of both sides is still there. As long as Eastern Qi produces a slightly passable emperor, the Northern Yen will be in danger. At this time, I can't do anything about the external problems, but as for the internal problems, I want to completely solve them while I am still alive. Eunuch Han shook his head silently. Your Majesty is too anxious. Although the power of the northern Yen Jianghu is not as strong as eastern Qi, it is not that easy to deal with. Especially when His Majesty wants to kill with a borrowed knife. This is actually a risky move. Chu Xiu is not an obedient knife. People from the diabolism are the most dangerous. Previously, when His Majesty promised Taoist Wuwang of the Shade Mountain faction to become the national religion, Eunuch Han was against it. The people from the Shade Mountain faction are also from the diabolism. They are ruthless and not good people. But now, His Majesty actually lured this Chu Xiu here. This person has been notorious in the Jianghu for a long time and is also not a good person. Of course, Eunuch Han will not say these things because there is no need. He is just a servant, not a member of the Northern Yen royal family. What should be said can be said, and what should not be said, there is no need for him to say it. Moreover, for a hero like Xiang Long, it is certain that he is headstrong and will not listen to the advice of others. At this moment, after Chu Xiu walked out of the palace, his face was gloomy. Does Xiang Long really think of me as his official? He actually dares to force me like this. The Jinwu Hall and the Northern Yen Imperial Court are actually just partners. Lu Jianghe chuckled in Chu Xiu's ear and said, "Don't be surprised, the Imperial Court is like this." In the past, when the Kunlun Devil cult was still around, whether it is Eastern Qi or Northern Yen, they did not dare to interfere in any Jianghu matters. Now, this old Northern Yen emperor has the guts to dare to have designs on the Temple of Great Light. Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghe. At this moment, Taoist Wuwang came out from the other side of the palace. Seeing Chu Xiu, Taoist Wuwang revealed a smile and said, "It seems that official Chu has been entrusted with an important task by His Majesty. Congratulations." Although Daoist Wuyang was congratulating him, his expression was one of schadenfreude. Going head-on against the Temple of Great Light is not a good task. Aren't you, Chu Xiu, very capable? Aren't you high profile? Now, this kind of good thing naturally fell on your head, and not on my head. Chu Xiu did not say anything. He just stared at Taoist Wuwang until he saw Taoist Wuwang's hair stand on end. Only then did he say, "You think this is a good thing? You are gloating at my misfortune, but you are the one laughing at yourself." Taoist Wuwang frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu looked around and said, "Let's find a quiet place to talk." Chapter 778. Taoist Wuyang was inexplicably brought to a restaurant by Chu Xiu. Facing Chu Xiu alone, Taoist Wuyang was rather nervous. Actually, this time, Taoist Wuyang had come to mock Chu Xiu. Previously in the Suppression Martial Hall, Taoist Wuyang had been suppressed by Chu Xiu to the extreme. In name, he was the general director of the Suppression Martial Hall, but in reality, he could not interfere with the authority of the Suppression Martial Hall at all. In the Jianghu, whenever the Suppression Martial Hall was mentioned, the first person that came to mind was Chu Xiu, and not Taoist Wuyang, who had an extremely low presence. Taoist Wuyang also knew why Xiang Long had sought out Chu Xiu this time, so he was very happy in his heart. "You, Chu Xiu, are high-profile and arrogant. You used to be very awe-inspiring, but look at you now. You've become the bird that sticks out, haven't you?" But who would have thought that Chu Xiu would not be angry, and instead bring him here? Taoist Wuyang was also a little uneasy. This Chu Xiu could not possibly want to kill him, could he? Previously, there were many eyes in the palace, but now it was quiet here. This was the best time to strike. But just because he had mocked Chu Xiu, he wanted to kill him. This Chu Xiu should not be that crazy, right? But according to Chu Xiu's usual style of doing things, he seemed to be such a crazy person. Taoist Wuyang's imagination was running wild when Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Taoist Wuyang, do you think that His Majesty sending me to fight the Temple of Great Light is a very funny thing?" Daoist Wuyang was startled by Chu Xiu's sudden words. His body trembled violently, and he almost fled. But sensing that Chu Xiu did not have any killing intent, Taoist Wuyang laughed awkwardly and said, "It's not funny." Official Chu, please do not mind my words just now. Chu Xiu glanced at Daoist Wuyang curiously, not knowing why he had such a huge reaction. He did not know that his ferocity had reached such a level. Without even saying a word, Daoist Wuyang's imagination had already made him seem like he was about to kill someone. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Daoist priest 5 disasters, I know that you have a problem with me. However, you should know very well where this problem comes from. My promise to Xianglong to establish the Jinwu Hall was just a deal. Your cooperation with the Northern Yan Imperial Court is also a deal. Xianglong can set up another department for you and me at the same time when he establishes the Suppression Martial Hall. Not only will there be no conflict, but both of us can cooperate sincerely. We can also maximize our strength, right?" Daoist Wuyang did not speak. He was not an idiot. He naturally knew about these things. However, knowing was one thing, but it did not mean that he could let it go. He naturally did not dare to resent Xianglong, so he could only challenge Chu Xiu. Of course, he could only use some small tricks in the dark. He did not have the guts to directly clash with Chu Xiu. Looking at Daoist Wuyang, Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said word by word, "Daoist Wuyang, no matter what enmity your Shadow Mountain sect had with the Kunlun devil cult in the past, you must remember that you and I are people of the pugilistic world, not people of the imperial court. The pugilistic world and the imperial court are always opposing existences. Xianglong may have used us, but he has never trusted us." Chu Xiu's words caused Daoist Wuyang's heart to tremble violently. Chu Xiu was speaking the truth. He could also see that Xianglong had never trusted him. Although he had been by Xianglong's side longer than Chu Xiu, to Xianglong, the two were the same. Xianglong did not trust Chu Xiu, and similarly did not trust Daoist Wuyang. After a moment of silence, Daoist Wuyang said, "Official Chu, so what do you mean now?" Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "Daoist Wuyang, without the lips, the teeth will be cold. Today, Xianglong was able to force me to go against the Temple of Great Light. This is enough to show Xianglong's attitude towards us people of the pugilistic world. We are nothing more than his lackeys. Once the cunning hare is dead, the lackey will be cooked. Xianglong still has a use for us now, and he will do this, let alone in the future when he has no use for us. Today, I am the unlucky one. Bringing Daoist Wuyang with me, do you dare say that you will never have a turn?" Daoist Wuyang's expression was somewhat uncertain. In truth, when he first heard the news, Daoist Wuyang's first reaction was indeed to gloat at Chu Xiu's misfortune. But after Chu Xiu explained everything clearly, Daoist Wuyang was no longer in the mood to gloat over his misfortune. Emperors were fickle, and a mighty ruler like Xianglong was even colder by nature. Chu Xiu had been the viceroy of the subduing martial hall for a long time, and he had helped Xianglong settle many things. It could be said that Xianglong had profited greatly from the deal with Chu Xiu. But now, he still had to fall out with him. After a moment of silence, Daoist Wuyang asked, "Then Official Chu, what do you mean?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "What do I mean? Some things are not good to say too clearly. But I believe that you, Daoist Wuyang, should be able to see one thing. Xianglong probably won't be able to live for long. Since Xianglong wants to see us opposing each other, then you and I will put on a show for Xianglong. As for the future, we can talk about it later. But I'm afraid that the Northern Yan court will not be peaceful for long. I believe that when the time comes, Daoist Wuyang, you should know which side you should stand on." After saying this, Chu Xiu patted Daoist Wuyang's shoulder and turned to leave. In the restaurant, Daoist Wuyang's expression was somewhat uncertain. He was also a little uncertain about what Chu Xiu was planning. But it was clear that Xianglong had angered Chu Xiu this time. From his tone, he was preparing for a big one. For Chu Xiu to dare call Xianglong by his name in front of him, it was obvious that he had no respect for Xianglong at all. Daoist Wuyang's Shadow Mountain sect was a branch of Taoism after all. He still had some qi divination skills. He saw Xianglong a few days ago. At this moment, Xianglong was indeed haunted by death. Even with those precious treasures, his own aging could not be made up for. When the day of Xianglong's death came, the northern Yan court would be in chaos. Which side would he stand on? This was a question that was worth pondering. Of course, for now, Daoist Wuyang was very much in agreement with what Chu Xiu said. Right now, they were on the same side. They could put on a show on the surface, but they could not really kill each other on the inside. After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Mei Qinglian wanted to ask Chu Xiu what Xianglong had said to him. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Gather everyone. Let's go to the meeting hall to discuss." After a quarter of an hour, all of Chu Xiu's trusted elites had gathered in the Jianghu Hall. Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu were there. Tang Ye and the other old men under Chu Xiu, as well as Zhao Qingping and the others from the Yinma clan were also there. Moreover, Lu Fengxian had also brought Shui Wuxiang and the other three here. Originally, Mei Qinglian did not call Lu Fengxian. However, Lu Fengxian was in the Jianghu Hall. He thought that something had happened, so he followed to see if he could help. Everyone knew the relationship between Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu, so they did not say much. Looking at the crowd, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Just now, Xianglong asked me to go over and force the Jianghu Hall to take action to deal with the Great Light Temple. He wanted to test their bottom line." Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "What is Xianglong thinking? Provoking the Great Light Temple at this time, is he courting death?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Of course, Xianglong knows that this is courting death. Therefore, he did not send the Northern Yan's national 5 armies, but sent the Jianghu Hall. Why? It's just to drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. The national 5 armies are Northern Yan's own people, while we are outsiders. Most importantly, we belong to the Yinma clan. Once something happens to me, will the Yinma clan let it go? At that time, the Northern Yan Imperial Court does not need to do anything. The Yinma clan itself will fight with the Great Light Temple. Even if both sides are not destroyed, their vitality will be greatly damaged. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, the Northern Yan Imperial Court will benefit." Pang Hu rubbed his head and sneered, "Like I said, that old thing Xianglong is not a person who is easy to get along with. Cooperating with him is like asking a tiger for its skin." Chu Xiu, why don't you just bring the Jianghu Hall and rebel against the Northern Yan? The Qilian stockade will still follow you. In this Northern Yan land, the power that we can create together will not lose to the 36 northern bandits of the past. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Rebel against the Northern Yan Imperial Court? During this period of time, I have led the Jianghu Hall to help the Northern Yan Imperial Court suppress so many sects in the pugilistic world. These are all achievements and foundations. If I leave now, won't there be nothing left? Even if I want to leave, I can't just leave like this. Otherwise, won't we suffer a great loss?" Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "What can we do if we don't leave? Are you really going to go against the Great Light Temple?" Chu Xiu said, "We'll talk about the Great Light Temple in the future. For now, all of you should be careful and try to maintain your strength. Don't get into conflict with the Imperial Court. The same goes for Taoist Wuyang's people. Also, I would like to meet with Senior Wei to discuss some matters." Mei Qinglian asked, "What is it?" Chu Xiu squinted and said, "I want to ask old Senior Wei if he has any plans to let the Yinma clan settle down in the Northern Yan. After drifting for so long, the Yinma clan should have a stable base. They don't have to hide underground." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Mei Qinglian was shocked. What was Chu Xiu planning to do? Was he going to rebel? The Yinma clan had a special identity. Even if the Yinma clan surrendered to him, Xianglong would not dare to accept them. Otherwise, wouldn't the Northern Yan become a den of demons? As for Chu Xiu, he was a special case. Chu Xiu had always appeared in front of the pugilistic world. It was not until recently that he revealed his identity as a member of the Yinma clan. Moreover, he had fought against the attacks of the Northern Yan and Eastern Qi alliances. He had the right to appear in the pugilistic world openly. Therefore, it was not a problem for Xianglong to cooperate with Chu Xiu. Although Mei Qinglian knew that Chu Xiu had always been bold, this time, he had actually set his sights on the northern Yan imperial court. This could not be called bold, it was simply crazy. Chapter 779. To be honest, Chu Xiu did not intend to fall out with Xianglong so soon. He had a good life in the northern Yan. As for the imperial court, he only needed to complete the task given by Xianglong. On the Jianghu side, except for the big sects like the Great Guangming Temple, the other forces in the northern Yan Wulin were not as strong as the eastern Qi Wulin, so Chu Xiu could deal with them easily. Therefore, if there were no accidents, Chu Xiu really wanted to manage the name of the Jianghu Hall well and develop its strength quietly. Even Chu Xiu let the people in the Jianghu Hall perform their own duties and develop various departments. Although it was still a little immature, it was complete. Some specialized in intelligence, although the source and speed of information were not as fast as the wind media of the wind-sweeping building. There were also those who forged weapons, though it took a lot of effort to forge even a single precious weapon. Some refined elixirs, although they could only refine the blood recovery elixir. Although the effect was not satisfactory, at least it was very comprehensive. Under Chu Xiu's command, there was already a complete embryonic force, not only with force. As a result, who would have thought that Xianglong would play such a trick on him? The rabbit was not dead yet, but he began to plot. This time, because Chu Xiu originally wanted to go to the extreme north to dig the treasure left by Lu Jianghe, he had to agree. But next time, maybe Xianglong would do something, so Chu Xiu had to prepare early. Because Chu Xiu could not leave the northern Yan for the time being, after Mei Qinglian informed Wei Shiya came in person. In the secret room of the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu bowed to Wei Shiya and said, "Elder Wei, I'm really sorry to trouble you to come here at this time." After the war between the righteous and the devil, Wei Shiya, a true fire expert in the spiritual refinement realm who participated in the war, was almost always in seclusion. It could be considered as recuperating and digesting the gains of the war. This time, when Chu Xiu asked for it, Wei Shiya came in person. It could be said that he had given Chu Xiu enough face. Wei Shiya hammered his thigh and said, "It's fine. I was born to be a laborer. I should move while I can. Otherwise, after a few years, I won't be able to move even if I want to. I heard from Mei last that you were tricked by that brat Xianglong, and now you want to scheme against the northern Yan?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not about the northern Yan. It's just that Xianglong is too cold-blooded. He wants to burn the bridge before crossing it. Since he's heartless, I naturally don't need to talk about morality. Northern Yan's Xianglong was indeed worthy of his title as a hero. With him around, even if I wanted to cause trouble in northern Yan, I wouldn't have the ability to do so. But now, as far as I know, Xianglong doesn't have much time left. My lurking devil clan might have a chance to take over northern Yan." Wei Shiya frowned and thought for a moment. If Xianglong dies, the northern Yan will fall into chaos for a while. But the northern Yan's royal family isn't weak either. Moreover, although the princes of the northern Yan aren't as strong as Xianglong, they aren't too weak either. The chaos will only last for a while. Eventually, peace will return. So, there aren't many opportunities for us to intervene. Chu Xiu said lightly, under normal circumstances, that would be the case. But if we intervene, the northern Yan won't just be in chaos for a while. Wei Shiya was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "I almost forgot. You're still the one who's cunning. You should be the best at this kind of thing." Wei Shiya's comment on Chu Xiu's cunning wasn't meant to scold him. In the demonic path, it was a compliment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have praised Chu Xiu for being cunning, but for being kind. Wei Shiya waved his hand. "I'll leave the thinking to you youngsters. This old man is old, and my brain can't keep up. I won't meddle in this. As long as you're confident, it's fine. Whatever you want to do, just tell me." Chu Xiu said, Xianglong isn't dead yet, but we need to make preparations on our side. I only have one request for you to come here, and that is for you to use your connections to secretly gather the people on your side or those who are on good terms with you to the Northern Yen Kingdom. Let me think of a way to secretly insert them into the Northern Yen Kingdom's imperial court. These people don't need to do anything for the time being. They just need to lay low and wait for my news to spread. Then, they can move at the same time. Mei Qinglian, who was at the side, felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know what Chu Xiu's plan was, but it was obvious that Chu Xiu didn't have good intentions by inserting so many people into the Northern Yen court. Once it was launched, the power would be beyond imagination. Moreover, this was a decision that Wei Shiya had to ponder over. Chu Xiu was playing such a big game. The Northern Yen royal family and the Northern Yen court weren't weak either. If something went wrong, it would be a serious blow to the Yinma clan. To be more precise, it would be a blow to Wei Shiya's people. In fact, for so many years, Wei Shiya didn't establish his own sect or accept many disciples like the other Yinma clan leaders. However, he had a lot of people under his command. These people weren't Wei Shiya's subordinates, nor were they his disciples. But they all treated him with great respect. Some of them admired Wei Shiya. After all, he was one of the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain. He was the last backbone of the Yinma clan. Wei Shiya's identity alone was worthy of their respect. There were also warriors of the Hidden Devil clan like Chu Wuji, who had received favors from Wei Shiya. They were also willing to follow Wei Shiya and be at his beck and call. As long as Wei Shiya asked, these people wouldn't refuse. However, it was precisely because of this that Wei Shiya had to be extremely cautious when it came to such a big matter. Otherwise, he would lose the lives of so many warriors of his lineage. Especially since these people trusted him so much, Wei Shiya would feel a heartache. After a while, Wei Shiya asked in a low voice, "How confident are you?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I can't say for sure. No one can say for sure that they will succeed. 30% depends on oneself and 70% depends on the heavens. I can only do my best and leave the rest to the heavens. But once it's done, the Yinma clan will have a firm foothold in the Northern Yen and become our foundation." Wei Shiya let out a long sigh and said, "Okay, no problem. I'll go back and arrange it. But Chu Xiu, you have to be very careful about this. They trusted I, and now I trust you too. I hope you won't let me down." Chu Xiu bowed slightly and said, "Don't worry, Elder Wei. When have I ever done anything unprepared?" With that, Wei Shiya turned around and left, leaving only Mei Qinglian and Chu Xiu in the secret room. Looking at Chu Xiu, Mei Qinglian had a strange look on her face. She said, "Are you really going to do something big this time?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not that I'm prepared. It's just that the arrow on the bow has to be released. If I wasn't prepared, I would have been tricked to death by that old fart, Xianglong, without even knowing how I died." Mei Qinglian waved her hand and said, "Forget it. I won't say much. It's good that you're prepared. Just like what old Wei said, you're the best at scheming." Chu Xiu said with a serious expression, "I'm actually good at persuading people with reason, but there are a lot of people who are unreasonable now, so I can only take out my knife and explain things to them." "Then why didn't you take out your knife when you were facing Xianglong?" Mei Qinglian's expression was as if she'd believe him. "If I dare to draw my knife against Xianglong now, I probably won't even be able to walk out of the palace alive. It's precisely because it's useless to just pull out a knife when facing some people, so it's reasonable to use some small tricks at this time." Mei Qinglian snorted and said, "I can't be bothered to listen to your nonsense. Old Wei has already arranged people. How are you going to stuff people into the Northern Yen court?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I don't have the slightest foundation in the Northern Yen court. Other than stuffing people into the Jianghu hall, I can't do anything else. So I need someone else to handle this matter." "Who?" "Xiang Wu and a prince." Chu Xiu didn't even think before he spoke. It was obvious that he had already come up with a countermeasure. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, Xiangwu? The guy who likes to eat bananas? I remember he's also from the Northern Yan royal family. Is he reliable? And which prince are you talking about? How can you be so sure that those princes will listen to you? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, if Xiangwu isn't reliable, he wouldn't be able to become the great general of the West Hill Army. As for which prince it is, I still need to test them one by one. But I believe that almost all the princes want to sit on the dragon throne. And among these princes, there are many who have resentment towards Xianglong. Anyway, I'll test them one by one and find a suitable candidate. After explaining to Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu prepared to go to Xiangwu first. Xiangwu and Chu Xiu had a deep cooperation. In the beginning, Xiangwu helped Chu Xiu to stop the Huangfu old ancestor. After that, Chu Xiu also cooperated with Xiangwu. He helped Xiangwu obtain the trade route of the giant spirit gang and helped him support the soldiers under him. Most people would feel that Xiangwu wasn't very reliable after seeing him, just like Mei Qinglian. But in fact, Xiangwu was a person who could see things more clearly than anyone else. He was also very steady in doing things. An unreliable general without the slightest ambition would not always think about fighting for the interests of his soldiers. When Chu Xiu went to see Xiangwu, he specially bought a basket of bananas as a gift. He knew that Xiangwu liked bananas. But it was quite difficult to buy in northern Yan. Chu Xiu had people search half of Yanjing before finding it. When he arrived at Xiangwu's mansion, Chu Xiu found nothing. The servants said that Xiangwu was in the barracks outside the city. When Chu Xiu turned around and came to the barracks, Xiangwu seemed to have already heard the news. He was waiting at the gate in advance. When he saw Chu Xiu coming over with bananas, he directly took it and scolded, "Why did you bring anything? Official Chu, you are really treating me like an outsider." Chapter 780. General Xiang welcomed Chu Xiu into the barracks. With an arrogant expression, he pointed at the soldiers who were training in the barracks and said, "Lord Chu, my West Hill army has the shortest history among the 5 armies of the Northern Yan Kingdom. It has developed to this state in just a dozen years. What do you think? Strong troops and strong horses." Chu Xiu only said these 4 words, but Xiangwu was already overjoyed. To him, these 4 words were the best compliment he could receive. Moreover, Chu Xiu was not praising Xiangwu ideologically, but the West Hill army under Xiangwu was really not weak. Although the people of Jianghu and the warriors of the military both practiced martial arts, their paths were completely different, especially in the early stage. Most of the martial arts practiced by the people of Jianghu in the early stage were used for one-on-one combat, so their development was more comprehensive. They did not need to be proficient in close combat, weapons and concealed weapons, as well as speed, but at least they needed to know a little. But the warriors of the military were different. The military did not have the time to wait for a martial artist to fully develop, so the martial artists who came from the military only cultivated 2 things. One was to train their muscles and bones, temper their bodies, and the other was to cultivate those single but extremely powerful killing skills. There were tens of thousands of people fighting on the battlefield, so it was useless to learn those messy martial arts skills. As long as they had a killing skill, it was enough. At the moment, the warriors of the West Hill army under Xianglong were gathered together. Their qi and blood were surging, and their killing intent was soaring. It could be said that they were all elites. After bringing Chu Xiu into the tent, there was also a fair-faced, middle-aged warrior who looked like a Confucian scholar. Chu Xiu said softly, "I have something secret to discuss with you, Marquis." Xiangwu waved his hand and said, "Official Chu, just say it. This is Yin Luohua, my trusted subordinate. No matter how big the secret is, there is no need to hide it from him. Come to think of it, Old Yin and Official Chu know each other. When Official Chu first made a name for yourself in East Yan, Old Yin was stationed there as a general." Yin Luohua smilingly cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "I've known Official Chu for a long time. Back then, I already felt that official Chu was extraordinary. Now, it seems that I really have a good eye for people. Lord Yin is too polite. Chu Xiu gently raised his eyebrows and cupped his hands towards Yin Luohua. What he wanted to say was too sensitive, and he didn't want others to hear it. However, since Jianghu has made Yin Luohua stay here, Chu Xiu cannot drive her away. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly said to Xianghu, Marquis, what I want to tell you today is somewhat treasonous. Once the two of you hear it, you will not be able to speak of it. Of course, even if the two of you leak the news, I will not admit it. Hearing Chu Xiu say it so formally and seriously, Xianghu and Yin Luohua's expressions changed slightly. Treasonous? What was Chu Xiu trying to do? Looking at the two of them, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, not long ago, His Majesty forced the subduing Marshal Hall to be the vanguard to station troops in the extreme north. You should know the consequences of such an action. This is basically a provocation to the Great Light Temple. Xianghu and Yin Luohua looked at each other. They were not idiots and naturally could hear that something was wrong. Xianghu rubbed his chin and said, Official Chu, have you offended His Majesty? Don't worry, when there's a chance, I will help you plead for leniency for His Majesty. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Of course not. Marquis, have you not seen His Majesty for a long time? Xianghu frowned and said, Yes, it's been a few months. What's wrong? Did something happen to His Majesty? In fact, in terms of status, Xianghu should be the most trustworthy person for Xianglong. After all, he was born into the Northern Yan royal family. Of course, this was the reality. Xianglong loved to order Xianghu to do things big and small. But in fact, Xianghu also knew that this trust came with a price. That price was that his connections in the Northern Yan court were not very high. In the eyes of the other Northern Yan military experts, they were the same kind of people. And Xianghu, who was born into the Northern Yan royal family, was another kind of person. He definitely represented the interests of the Northern Yan royal family. But in fact, only Xianghu himself knew that he was actually being ostracized by the Northern Yan royal family. Although he was considered a member of the Northern Yan royal family, he was born into a collateral branch. His bloodline with the Northern Yan royal family had thinned to a certain extent, and the two sides actually had no feelings for each other. That was why Xianglong had summoned him back and entrusted him with a heavy responsibility. What he valued was only his public identity and ability. To put it bluntly, Xianglong wanted to use Xianghu to divide the power of the Northern Yan military. He did not want them to be as united as a piece of iron. His purpose was the same as Daoist Wuyang and Chu Xiu. Xianghu was considered by the military to be a member of the Northern Yan royal family, but at the same time, the Northern Yan royal family did not see him as one of their own. Therefore, Xianghu could only rely on Xianglong. Although Xianghu was unreliable most of the time, he was very clear about these things. If it were anyone else, they might have tried to curry favor with Xianglong to solidify their position. But with Xianghu's personality, he was not one for flattery. Xianghu knew his position. As long as his strength remained at its peak, then Xianglong would always put him in an important position, even more so than others. On the other hand, if he did not have the strength, then no matter how hard he tried to curry favor with Xianglong, it would be useless. All in all, his relationship with Xianglong could be considered a deal. Since it was a deal, then it should be more straightforward. There was no need for all those messy things, and he naturally would not stay by Xianglong's side. I'm afraid His Majesty will not last much longer this time. The last time I saw His Majesty, he was already surrounded by a deathly aura. That is why His Majesty is in such a hurry to have me deal with the Great Guangming Temple. I think he is preparing to deal with any uncertain factors within the Northern Yan first, so that the next generation can have a stable Northern Yan. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Xianghu felt somewhat conflicted. Since Xianglong was already showing signs of his lifespan reaching its end, he only needed to make a trip to the palace to immediately find out the truth. Therefore, he did not suspect that Chu Xiu would lie to him. He did not have any feelings for Xianglong. The two of them were just a deal. However, it would not be so easy to find someone like Xianglong who understood him so well, and who worked together with him so well. So, what are you trying to say? Xiang Wu stared at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "What I want to say is very simple. A new emperor brings his own ministers. Marquis, you should think about the future. His Majesty is a great ruler. When he is around, Northern Yen will not fall into chaos. When he is gone, Northern Yen will undoubtedly fall into chaos. Therefore, at this time, your standpoint is very important. But Marquis, your standpoint now is on His Majesty's side. When His Majesty leaves, where are you going to stand? It seems that Marquis, you have no relationship with any of the princes. His Majesty will not allow you to contact any of the princes now." The smile on Xiang Wu's face gradually disappeared. Yin Luohua also looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze. This person really dared to talk about when the Northern Yen Emperor Xianglong would die in Yanjing City. This question was really a sensitive one. In fact, Yin Luohua had also mentioned this to Xiang Wu, asking him to manage his own power and not just limit it to the West Hill Army. When His Majesty was still around, Xiang Wu could do whatever he wanted. But once Xianglong was gone, the new emperor might not tolerate Xiang Wu, nor might he understand the value of Xiang Wu's existence. At this time, only strength and power could really protect oneself. Xiang Wu narrowed his eyes and said, "Then what do you mean? Are you saying that you want me to stand on your side?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Marquis, please don't joke. Even if I change my surname to Xiang, I can't become the Northern Yen Emperor. I just want to temporarily ally with you, Marquis, just in case. The Jinwu Hall's power is in the open, but there is still a part of the Yinma clan's power hidden in the dark. So I want Marquis to help me put these people into the Northern Yen court. Any position is fine, just not particularly important." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Xiang Wu's face suddenly darkened. He said coldly, "You want to rebel?" Chu Xiu's expression did not change. He said, "I can't start a Northern Yen rebellion. There is the Northern Yen royal family holding the fort, and there are so many experts in the court and military. If I want to overthrow the Northern Yen, do you think these people are enough? As I said, this is just in case. Marquis, don't forget, no matter when, one's own strength is fundamental." With that, Chu Xiu stood up and said, "Marquis, after I say these things today, I will not admit it again. I will give you some time to consider. Once you have made up your mind, just send someone to the Jinwu Hall to inform me." With that, Chu Xiu left, leaving behind Xiang Wu and Yin Luohua who were deep in thought. When Chu Xiu walked out of the military camp, Lu Jianghu suddenly said, "Boy, do you think that guy will agree to your conditions? Don't forget, that guy's surname is also Xiang. Why did the big sects and families of the past spend so much effort to hunt down the holy sect and the sects that are related to us? They are afraid that we are connected to each other and will do something." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Yes, his surname is Xiang, but it is not the Xiang of Xianglong. Although he is said to be from the remote royal family, Xiang Wu does not have much sense of belonging to the Northern Yen. We have a choice, but Xiang Wu has no choice. If he chooses to turn a blind eye and continue living like this, then when something happens to Xianglong, he will be the one in the most passive position. If he chooses to get close to the princes at this time, then it is also impossible. Be it Yin Luohua or Xiang Wu, they are not idiots and will not do such a thing. Xianglong is not dead yet, and he can't wait to find his next target. This is a big taboo. So, cooperating with me is Xiang Wu's best choice." You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.